Claire Hart sat alone in the city's most expensive restaurant, hiding behind a fake reservation and cheaper clothes, waiting for a man who would never arrive. At the next table, Nate Wilder checked his phone for the 19th time, pretending the empty chair across from him didn't mean what it obviously meant. Two strangers. Two no-shows. Two people about to discover that sometimes the wrong night leads you exactly where you need to be. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments so I can see how far this story travels. Hit that like button and let's see where love finds us tonight. The restaurant was the kind of place where silence cost extra. Claire Hart had chosen it specifically for that reason, not for the Michelin star, or the waiters who moved like shadows, or the wine list that read like a mortgage payment. She'd chosen it because people here knew how to mind their own business. They paid for discretion the way other establishments charged for appetizers. And tonight, Claire needed that more than she needed food. She sat at table 12 wearing jeans she'd bought that afternoon, tags removed in the car, creases still sharp from the package, and a sweater she'd borrowed from her assistant without asking. Her hair, usually smoothed into corporate perfection, hung loose around her shoulders in a way that felt foreign and slightly dangerous. No jewelry except her watch, which she'd turned face down on her wrist so she wouldn't compulsively check it. No makeup except what she could apply at a red light. She looked, she thought, remarkably unremarkable. Exactly as intended. The reservation was under the name Sarah Mitchell, generic enough to be invisible, borrowed from a character in a book she'd never actually read. The whole setup felt like theater, like she was playing dress-up in someone else's life, which Claire supposed she was. Across from her, the empty chair mocked her with its vacancy. 7:43. The blind date her executive assistant had arranged, practically begged her to accept, was now 43 minutes late, not fashionably late, not stuck in traffic late, the kind of late that was actually early for not showing up at all. Claire took a sip of water and told herself she didn't care. She'd agreed to this ridiculous setup only because Marcy had looked at her with those concerned eyes that made Claire feel simultaneously touched and invaded. "You work 16-hour days," Marcy had said, not for the first time. "When was the last time you went on an actual date? And no, business dinners don't count, even if the other person is single." "I'm fine," Claire had replied, the same answer she always gave. "You eat lunch at your desk and dinner in your office. You haven't taken a vacation in 3 years. You're not fine. You're running on fumes and calling it fuel." The words had hit harder than Claire wanted to admit. So she'd said yes to the blind date mostly to prove Marcy wrong, to demonstrate that she was perfectly capable of having a personal life when she chose to, that her solitude was a preference, not a prison. Now, sitting alone in expensive denim and borrowed wool, Claire wondered who exactly she'd been trying to convince. Her phone buzzed. Not the personal cell, that one sat silent as a stone, but the work phone she'd promised herself she wouldn't check. She looked anyway. 3 emails from her COO about the merger, 2 from legal about contract language, 1 from her PR director about a profile piece some magazine wanted to run. The Ice Queen of Tech, how Claire Hart built an empire without breaking a smile. She'd killed that story with a single email. Claire set the phone face down on the table next to the other phone, both of them dark, both of them silent. Together, they looked like a small graveyard of failed connections. "Can I get you started with anything while you wait?" The waiter appeared with the kind of timing that suggested he'd been trained to sense emotional discomfort from across the room. His expression was professionally neutral. No pity, no judgment, just service elevated to an art form. "I'm fine with water for now," Claire said. "Of course, I'll check back shortly." He vanished before Claire could thank him. She was reaching for her phone again, the work one, because at least those emails wanted something from her, when she heard the voice from the next table. "Your date's not coming either." Claire's head snapped up. The man at table 13 sat in profile to her, close enough that she could see the wear in his jacket collar, far enough that he could pretend he hadn't been watching her peripherally for the last 20 minutes. He wasn't looking at her now. He was staring at his own empty chair, at his own silent phone, but his words hung in the air between their tables like a confession. Claire's first instinct was to deny it, to armor up with the kind of cool dismissal she'd perfected in boardrooms across 3 continents, to make him regret assuming he knew anything about her life. But something in his voice stopped her. Not pity, not even sympathy, just recognition. She turned to look at him fully. He was maybe 40, maybe older, the kind of tired that added years regardless of birth certificates. Dark hair going gray at the temples in a way that looked earned rather than distinguished. Lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled more than he probably should, given what life had apparently handed him. He wore a button-down shirt that had been ironed with more hope than skill, and boots that had walked through more honest work than boardrooms. His hands, Claire noticed, were calloused. "I'm sorry," she said, though she wasn't sure what she was apologizing for. "I didn't mean to intrude on your evening." "You didn't." He finally looked at her, and his eyes were a particular shade of blue that reminded Claire of something she couldn't quite name. "I did. By saying something. Sorry. He gestured at his own table setup, identical to hers. 2 waters, 2 menus, 1 person. Misery loves company, I guess. "Is that what this is?" Claire asked. "Misery?" He considered the question with more seriousness than it probably deserved. "I don't know. What do you call it? When you get dressed up for something you knew probably wouldn't happen, but you showed up anyway because the alternative was admitting you'd given up?" Claire felt something shift in her chest, a crack in the ice she hadn't realized had formed. "Hope," she said quietly. "That's called hope." "Then yeah." He smiled, but it was the saddest smile Claire had ever seen. "I guess I'm hopeful." They sat in their respective silences for a moment, 2 strangers pretending not to be having a conversation while actively having one. "I'm Nate," he said finally. Claire hesitated. The whole point of tonight was anonymity. Sarah Mitchell. No last names, no job titles, no real life bleeding into the performance. But something about the way he'd offered his name, simply, without expectation, made the lie feel impossible. "Claire. Nice to meet you, Claire." "You too, Nate." Another silence, but this one felt different, less empty, more full of things neither of them knew how to say. "Can I ask you something?" Nate said. "That depends on the question." "Fair enough." He shifted in his chair, turning slightly more toward her. "Did you come here tonight wanting to meet someone, or wanting to prove you could?" The question landed like a punch. Claire opened her mouth, then closed it. Every corporate deflection she'd ever mastered suddenly felt inadequate. Because the truth was right there, sharp and undeniable. She'd come here to prove she was fine alone. To demonstrate that her life didn't need anyone else in it. To show Marcy and herself that solitude was a choice, not a sentence. And yet here she was, sitting in borrowed clothes under a fake name, talking to a stranger about hope. "Both," she admitted. "How did you know?" "Because I did the same thing." Nate rubbed the back of his neck, a gesture that seemed unconscious and oddly vulnerable. "Someone I care about suggested I try dating again. Said it wasn't healthy to be alone all the time. So I made a profile on one of those apps, swiped on someone who seemed nice, and agreed to meet here. Told myself I was being brave, being open." "But you weren't," Claire said softly. "No." His smile turned self-deprecating. "I was proving I could survive another disappointment. That's not the same as being open." Claire felt her throat tighten. "No, it's not." The waiter reappeared, sensing a shift in the emotional weather. "Have we decided?" Nate looked at Claire, something uncertain in his expression. She looked back at him, and for reasons she couldn't articulate and didn't want to examine, she heard herself say, "Could we possibly move to one table?" The waiter's professional mask didn't slip, but his eyes warmed. "Of course. Would you prefer to join the gentleman, or shall I bring the gentleman's setting to you?" Claire glanced at Nate, raising an eyebrow in question. He stood immediately, gathering his water glass and phone with the quick efficiency of someone used to adapting to circumstances. "I'll come to you if that's okay. Table 12 it is," the waiter said smoothly. "I'll bring the gentleman's menu." Nate slid into the chair across from Claire, the chair that was supposed to hold a man she'd never met and now never would. He set his phone down next to hers, creating a small pile of silent devices. Then he looked at her with those sad, hopeful eyes and said, "So, new rule proposal. I'm listening. No last names, no job titles, no resume talk. His voice was steady but careful, like he was building something fragile. Just two people having dinner because the alternative is eating alone and pretending that doesn't hurt. Claire felt something dangerous rising in her chest, something that felt like relief and terror in equal measure. That's a lot of rules for someone who just sat down. I know. I'm sorry. He paused, searching for words. I'm tired of performing, of pretending I'm someone I'm not or hiding who I actually am. If we're going to do this, whatever this is, I'd rather it be real, even if real is messy. Claire studied him across the table, this man with his worn jacket and careful eyes, with his calloused hands and ironed shirt. This stranger who'd somehow named the thing she'd been running from for years, the exhaustion of performance, the weight of always being on. Okay, she said. Real. No last names, no job talk, no polished versions, just... She gestured vaguely at the space between them. This. This, Nate agreed. The waiter returned with menus and a subtle nod of approval. I'll give you a few moments to decide. They opened their menus in unison, a small symphony of synchronized movement. Claire scanned the offerings, each dish more elaborate and expensive than the last, and felt suddenly absurdly tired of all of it. The theater, the pretense, the performance of being someone who ate $28 appetizers alone on a Thursday night. Can I make another confession? She asked. Please? I don't actually want to eat here. Nate's eyes widened. Thank God, neither do I. I picked this place because I thought it would impress someone I'd never met and probably had nothing in common with. Now I'm here with you, and I'm realizing I'd rather be anywhere else. Claire laughed, actually laughed, for the first time in longer than she could remember. So what do? We leave. Nate said it like it was simple, like walking out of an expensive restaurant with a stranger wasn't a completely insane thing to do. There's a coffee shop 2 blocks away. They have terrible pastries and excellent coffee and tables that wobble. We can go there and keep not knowing each other's last names. Claire looked at him, really looked at him, at the hope and fear and exhaustion all mixed together in his expression. At the way he was offering her an exit from the performance they'd both been staging. She should say no, should make a polite excuse, pay for her water, and go home to her empty penthouse with its view of the city. Should protect herself from whatever this was before it became something that could hurt. But Claire had spent 15 years protecting herself, and she was so fucking tired of being safe. Okay, she said, let's go. Nate's face transformed. The sad, hopeful smile became just hopeful, and Claire felt an answering warmth in her chest that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. They caught the waiter's eye. Nate handled the awkward explanation with more grace than Claire expected, slipping him $40 for their trouble. We didn't even drink the water, he said apologetically. Sir, that's entirely unnecessary. Please, for your patience with our indecision. The waiter pocketed the money with a knowing smile. I hope you both find what you're looking for. Outside, the city was alive with October wind and early evening chaos. Cars honked. People rushed past in both directions, heads down, destinations fixed. The restaurant door closed behind them with a soft click of expensive hinges, and suddenly Claire was standing on a sidewalk with a stranger, about to have coffee for reasons she couldn't explain and didn't want to examine. This way, Nate said, gesturing north. They walked in comfortable silence for half a block. Claire became acutely aware of the small intimacies of walking beside someone, the rhythm of matching strides, the unconscious negotiation of sidewalk space, the way Nate shifted slightly outside to give her the building side of the path, small courtesies that felt enormous in their simplicity. Can I ask you something? Claire said. Turnabout's fair play. Why did you really come tonight? Not the official reason, the real one. Nate was quiet for several steps. They passed a bodega, a dry cleaner, a store selling nothing but phone cases. The coffee shop appeared ahead, its windows glowing warm against the darkening street. My son asked me if I was lonely, he said finally. Claire stopped walking. Nate stopped too, turning to face her. His expression held no self-pity, no plea for sympathy, just exhaustion and honesty in equal measure. He's 7, Nate continued. Last week, he was drawing at the kitchen table and he looked up at me and said, Dad, are you lonely? Just like that. like he was asking if I wanted juice. He shook his head, and I realized he was watching me, really watching. Seeing me come home tired every day, eat dinner across from him, put him to bed, and then sit alone in the living room with the TV on, but no sound, just existing. He saw that I was going through the motions. "What did you tell him?" Claire asked quietly. "The truth, that I was lonely sometimes, that grown-ups get lonely too." Nate's voice was steady but raw. "And you know what he said?" He said, "Maybe you should go on a date. My friend Mia's mom goes on dates and she seems happier." So I downloaded an app to prove to my 7-year-old that I was trying, that I hadn't given up on being a whole person beyond just being his dad. Claire felt something crack open inside her chest. "That's why you came." "That's why I came, not because I thought I'd meet someone, but because my kid was worried about me, and I couldn't let him grow up thinking loneliness is just something you accept, that you stop trying." He looked at her with those steady blue eyes. "So why did you come? The real reason." Claire could have lied, should have lied. But Nate had just handed her his heart in the middle of a sidewalk, and anything less than honesty felt like betrayal. "Because I've been eating dinner alone for so long, I've started to believe it's what I prefer," she said. "I've turned solitude into a religion. I've convinced myself that not needing anyone makes me stronger. But the truth is..." She stopped, surprised to feel her throat tightening. "The truth is I'm terrified. Not of being alone, of wanting to not be alone, of needing someone and having them see how much I need them. And then having them leave," Nate added softly. "Yes." They stood there on the sidewalk while people flowed around them like water around stones. Two people who'd come to the same restaurant for completely different reasons and ended up in exactly the same place, wanting something they'd convinced themselves they shouldn't want. "The coffee shop's right there," Nate said, pointing. "But if this is too much, if it's too fast or too honest or too anything, we can say goodnight here. No hard feelings, no expectations." He was giving her an out, a graceful exit from whatever was happening between them. Claire could take it, should take it, could go home to her penthouse and her spreadsheets and her carefully constructed solitude, could protect herself before this became something real, something that could hurt. But she thought about Nate's son asking if his dad was lonely, about Marcy's concerned eyes and careful words, about the woman in the mirror this morning who'd looked back at her with exhaustion the concealer couldn't quite hide, about the fact that she'd worn borrowed clothes and a fake name just to prove she could survive another disappointment. "No," Claire said, "I don't want to say goodnight here." Nate's smile was sunshine breaking through clouds. "Okay then. Let's go have terrible coffee and get to know each other without knowing each other." The coffee shop was called The Grind, which Claire suspected was someone's idea of ironic humor. Inside, it was exactly as Nate had described. Mismatched furniture, art on the walls that looked like someone's talented niece had contributed it, and the rich smell of coffee beans and cinnamon. Their table, predictably, wobbled. "I'll get us something," Nate said. "What do you drink?" "Whatever you're having." Dangerous words. I drink my coffee black and terrible. "Then I'll have it black and terrible too." Nate grinned and headed to the counter. Claire watched him go, noting the way he stood in line with his hands in his pockets, the way he smiled at the barista with genuine warmth, the way he counted out exact change from a worn leather wallet. Small observations that built a picture of someone she didn't know but desperately wanted to. He returned with 2 enormous mugs and a plate with something that might have once aspired to be a croissant. "The pastries really are terrible," he warned, setting everything down. "But they're terrible in a charming way." Claire tore off a piece. It was simultaneously dry and somehow soggy. "This is aggressively bad." "Right? It's kind of impressive." They sipped their coffee, which was actually excellent, and fell into the strange, wonderful rhythm of 2 people learning each other from scratch. No professional histories to lean on, no resumes to recite. Just the hard, honest work of revealing yourself one small truth at a time. "Okay," Nate said. "First question, and remember, we're doing real, so you can tell me to back off if I cross a line." "Ask?" "What do you do when you're not sitting in expensive restaurants under fake names?" Claire smiled despite herself. "That obvious, huh?" The jeans still have package creases. And you keep touching your sweater like it doesn't belong to you. It doesn't. I borrowed it. She wrapped her hands around her coffee mug, gathering courage. I work a lot. Like, an unhealthy amount. The kind where I have to set alarms to remember to eat lunch. And sometimes I sleep at the office because going home feels like more effort than it's worth. What kind of work? The kind where I make decisions that affect people I'll never meet, and I tell myself that's strategy rather than distance. Claire met his eyes. I'm good at it, really good. But I'm starting to wonder if being good at something is the same as it being good for you. Nate nodded slowly. I get that. I work with my hands, building things, fixing things. It's honest work, and I like it. But sometimes I come home and realize I've spent 8 hours focused on making things work, and I've forgotten how to make my own life work. How to be a person beyond being useful. Do you live here? In the city? Just outside. Small place. Enough room for me and my son and a life that's simple because I made it that way on purpose. He took a sip of coffee. What about you? Claire hesitated. The truth. 37th floor penthouse, floor-to-ceiling windows, art she'd paid a decorator to choose, felt like exactly the kind of resume talk they'd agreed to avoid. Alone, she said instead. I live alone. It was perhaps the most honest thing she'd said all night. Nate didn't respond immediately. He just looked at her with those careful, understanding eyes. That's not the same as lonely, though. Living alone. Isn't it? No, lonely is a feeling. Living alone is a circumstance. You can be surrounded by people and still be lonely, or you can be alone and feel completely at peace. He paused. Which one are you? Claire felt tears prick her eyes, sudden and unwelcome. She blinked them back hard. I don't know anymore. I think I convinced myself I was at peace. But tonight, sitting in that restaurant by myself, all dressed up with nowhere to go, her voice cracked slightly. I felt lonely, really, truly lonely, and that terrified me more than anything else. Why? Because, Claire stopped, searching for words. Because if I admit I'm lonely, then I have to admit I've been building the wrong thing all these years. That success and independence and not needing anyone isn't the same as being happy. And if I admit that, then I have to change. And change means risk, means possibly failing at something I can't control. Nate set his mug down carefully. Can I tell you something? Please? You're the bravest person I've met in a long time. Claire laughed, sharp and disbelieving. I'm sitting here talking about how afraid I am. That's not bravery. Yes, it is. Bravery isn't not being afraid. It's being afraid and showing up anyway. He leaned forward slightly. You came to that restaurant tonight even though you were terrified. You agreed to have coffee with a complete stranger. You're sitting here telling me true things when you could be hiding behind small talk. That's all courage, Claire. That's all bravery. Something in Claire's chest loosened, a knot she hadn't realized was there. Your turn, she said, needing to shift focus before she started crying in a coffee shop. Tell me something true. Nate smiled. Okay, true thing. I haven't been on a date since my son was born. 7 years. Not because I didn't want to, but because I convinced myself he needed all of me, and that meant there was nothing left for anyone else. That's a long time. Yeah. And you know what the crazy part is? I thought I was being noble, being a good dad, sacrificing my own needs for his. He shook his head. But I was actually teaching him that love means erasing yourself, that caring for someone means disappearing, and that's a terrible lesson. So you're here to unlearn it, Claire said softly. I'm here to try. To show him and myself that you can be a whole person and still love someone completely. That wanting things for yourself doesn't make you selfish. It makes you human. They sat in silence for a moment, letting the weight of their confession settle between them. This is the strangest first date I've ever been on, Claire said finally. Is that what this is? A date? I don't know. What would you call it? Nate considered. Two people being honest in a world that rewards pretending. Two people choosing to be brave when it would be easier to be safe. Two people... He stopped, his expression softening. Two people I'm really glad met each other tonight. Claire felt warmth spread through her chest. Dangerous, terrifying warmth. The kind that led to hope, which led to expectations, which led to disappointment. She should shut this down, should finish her coffee, thank him for a nice evening, and walk away before this became something that could hurt. But she didn't want to. "Me too," she whispered. They talked for another hour, about everything and nothing. About Nate's son, whose name was Cooper, and his obsession with dinosaurs and his conviction that vegetables were actually aliens trying to take over the world. About Claire's habit of working through lunch and how her assistant had started bringing her food with increasingly passive-aggressive notes attached. About the books they'd read, the movies they'd loved, the small joys and large failures that had shaped them into the people sitting across from each other in a wobbling table. Claire learned that Nate laughed easily, but cried harder. That he'd lost his wife when Cooper was 6 months old, a car accident, sudden and senseless, and had spent the last 7 years building a life out of the wreckage. That he still wore his wedding ring on a chain around his neck because taking it off felt like betrayal, but wearing it on his finger felt like lying. Nate learned that Claire was an only child who'd built an empire to prove she didn't need anyone else. That her parents had been proud but distant, more interested in her achievements than her happiness. That she measured success in metrics and milestones because feelings were too messy to quantify. That she'd never been in love, not really, because she'd never let anyone close enough to love. "That's sad," Nate said gently. "I know. Do you want it to be different?" Claire looked at him across the scarred surface of their terrible table, at his honest eyes and careful smile, and felt something shift inside her, something fundamental and terrifying and wonderful all at once. "I don't know," she admitted. "I've spent so long building walls, I'm not sure I remember how to build bridges." "Maybe you don't have to remember. Maybe you just have to try. And if I fail, then you fail. And you try again. That's what brave people do, Claire. They fail and get back up." Before Claire could respond, Nate's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and his entire expression changed, softening and tightening simultaneously. "I'm sorry," he said, standing quickly. "I have to take this." He stepped away from the table, phone pressed to his ear. Claire watched his body language shift, shoulders drawing in, voice lowering to something soothing. She couldn't hear the words, but she understood the tone. Something was wrong. When he came back to the table, his face was apologetic and resigned. "I have to go," he said. "Cooper woke up from a nightmare. The babysitter can handle it, but you should be there," Claire finished. "Yeah." He looked genuinely distressed about leaving. "I'm really sorry. Tonight was..." "It's okay," Claire said, standing. And the strange thing was, she meant it. Disappointment sat heavy in her chest, but underneath it was something else. Understanding, maybe even admiration. "Your son needs you. That's more important than coffee." "Is it terrible that I wish it wasn't?" Nate asked quietly. "Just for tonight?" Claire felt her throat tighten. "No, that just makes you human." They stood there in the coffee shop, neither quite ready to end what had started in a restaurant neither of them had wanted to be in. The moment stretched between them, full of things neither knew how to say. "Can I..." Nate pulled out his phone, unlocked it, held it out to her. "Can I get your number? I know we said no details, but I'd really like to talk to you again, when I'm not running out on you." This was it. The moment where Claire could smile politely, make an excuse, and disappear back into her carefully constructed solitude. The safe choice, the smart choice, the lonely choice. She took his phone and typed in her number, hands only shaking slightly. "There." Nate looked at the screen, then at her, and his smile could have powered the entire city. "I'll text you, so you have mine." "Okay." "Okay." He hesitated, then did something that stopped Claire's heart entirely. He reached out and squeezed her hand, just once, just briefly, and said, "Thank you. For tonight. For being real." Then he was gone, leaving Claire standing beside a wobbling table with her cooling coffee and a feeling in her chest she couldn't name. Her phone buzzed 60 seconds later. Ott's unknown number. "It was really nice to meet you tonight, Claire. Take care of yourself." Claire stared at the message. 4 simple sentences that felt like the beginning of something she'd spent 15 years avoiding. She should delete the number. Should let this be a strange, sweet memory. Should protect herself before this became something that could actually hurt. Instead, she saved the contact under Nate and then coffee shop and typed back, "You too. I hope Cooper's okay." She watched the typing indicator appear, disappear, appear again. Nate. Coffee shop, he will be. Kid's tougher than he looks. Takes after his old man that way. Claire smiled at her phone like an idiot. The barista was giving her a knowing look from behind the counter. Claire gathered her coat, left a generous tip, and walked out into the October night. The city hummed around her, all light and noise and forward motion. Somewhere across town, Nate was holding his son, being the kind of father who came home for nightmares. Somewhere in her penthouse, spreadsheets waited for her return, patient and undemanding. But Claire didn't go home. She walked, block after block, letting the cold air clear her head and fill her lungs. She thought about what Nate had said about bravery, that it wasn't the absence of fear but the decision to act despite it. She thought about his son asking if he was lonely, about her assistant's concerned eyes, about the woman she'd become and the woman she might still be able to be. Her phone buzzed again. Nate. Coffee shop. Can I tell you something embarrassing? Claire. Please do. Nate. Coffee shop. I'm sitting in my son's room right now, watching him sleep, and I can't stop smiling because I met you tonight. Cooper asked why I looked happy. I told him I made a friend. Claire stopped walking. Right there in the middle of the sidewalk, people flowing around her like she was a stone in a stream, she stopped and stared at her phone. She typed and deleted 3 responses before settling on. Claire. That's not embarrassing. That's sweet. Nate. Coffee shop. So you're saying I'm sweet. Careful, Claire without a last name. I might think you actually like me. Claire. I might actually like you, Nate, without a last name. That's what's terrifying. The typing indicator appeared immediately. Nate. Coffee shop. For what it's worth? I'm terrified too. But the good kind of terrified. The kind that means something might actually matter. Claire felt tears prick her eyes for the second time that night. She blinked them back, smiling at her phone in a way that probably made her look completely unhinged to passing strangers. Claire. I should let you get back to your son. Thank you for tonight. Nate. Coffee shop. Thank you for saying yes to terrible coffee with a stranger. Get home safe, Claire. She walked the rest of the way to her building in a daze. The doorman greeted her with his usual professional warmth. The elevator rose smoothly to the 37th floor. Her penthouse waited exactly as she'd left it, pristine, perfect, and completely empty. Claire stood in her living room, looking at the city lights spread out before her like a constellation of other people's lives. She'd bought this place because of the view, because standing here made her feel on top of the world, untouchable and unreachable. Tonight, it just made her feel alone. Her phone buzzed one more time. Nate. Coffee shop. I lied earlier. This wasn't just a nice evening. It was the best evening I've had in 7 years. I hope you sleep well. Claire typed back before she could overthink it. Claire. It was the best evening I've had in longer than 7 years. Sleep well, Nate. She set her phone on the kitchen counter, hung up her borrowed sweater, and stood in her empty penthouse wearing jeans with package creases and a feeling in her chest that felt dangerously like hope. Outside her windows, the city carried on. Somewhere in that sprawl of light and life, Nate was tucking his son in, probably double-checking the nightlight and making sure the bedroom door was open just the right amount. Somewhere out there, people were falling in love and falling apart, taking chances and playing it safe, building lives out of courage and compromise and the messy, terrifying choice to let other people in. And for the first time in 15 years, Claire wanted to be one of them. She picked up her phone one more time and typed a message she'd never sent to anyone before. Claire. Same time next week, same coffee shop? I'll even brave the terrible pastries again. She hit send before fear could stop her. The reply came faster than her heartbeat. Nate. Coffee shop. It's a date, and this time neither of us will be stood up. Claire smiled at her phone in her empty penthouse and felt something she'd forgotten how to feel. Excited about tomorrow, about next week, about the possibility that maybe, just maybe, The life she'd built with such careful precision was about to get beautifully, terrifyingly complicated. And instead of running from that feeling, she decided to run toward it. Claire woke up the next morning to 17 work emails, a calendar full of back-to-back meetings, and a text message that made her forget about all of it. Nate. Coffee shop. Good morning. Cooper wants to know if my new friend likes dinosaurs. This is apparently very important information. She was smiling before she was fully conscious, her phone still warm from charging overnight. The city stretched out below her windows in shades of gray and gold, Friday morning traffic already building into its usual symphony of horns and urgency. Claire had always loved this view, the sense of being above it all, untouchable. This morning, she wanted to be down there in it, part of the chaos instead of floating above it. Claire, tell Cooper that I think dinosaurs are excellent, but I'm admittedly not an expert. What's his favorite? She set the phone down and went to make coffee, but kept glancing at it while the machine gurgled and hissed. This was ridiculous. She was a 42-year-old woman acting like a teenager with a crush. She had a company to run, a merger to finalize, 300 employees depending on her to make smart decisions without letting personal distractions. Her phone buzzed. Nate. Coffee shop. Parasaurolophus. Don't worry, I can't spell it either without asking him 12 times. Apparently it's a hadrosaur, which means duck-billed dinosaur, and this is all very important. He's drawing you a picture right now. Claire laughed out loud in her empty kitchen, coffee forgotten. Claire, I would be honored to receive a Parasaurolophus portrait. Please tell him I'll treasure it. Nate. Coffee shop. You've made his entire morning, also mine, if we're being honest. How are you? Such a simple question. How are you? Not how's business or what's on your agenda today or any of the efficiency-focused inquiries that usually punctuated her mornings. Just, how are you? Claire looked around her pristine kitchen, at the breakfast she wouldn't eat and the coffee she'd drink too fast, at the life she'd built with such careful precision. Then she looked at her phone and decided to be honest. Claire. Nervous, excited, wondering if last night actually happened or if I imagined the whole thing. Nate. Coffee shop. It happened. I have a coffee shop receipt and a kid who won't stop asking about my friend to prove it. Claire. What did you tell him? About last night. The typing indicator appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Claire held her breath. Nate. Coffee shop. The truth. That I went to meet someone and she didn't show up, but I met someone else instead. Someone who made me laugh and think and remember what it feels like to talk to another adult about things that matter. He asked if I liked you. I said yes. Claire's chest tightened. She typed carefully, aware that whatever she said next would matter. Claire. I'm glad you said yes, because I like you too, and that's both wonderful and terrifying. Nate. Coffee shop. Why terrifying? Claire. Because liking someone means wanting to see them again. And seeing them again means risking disappointment. And disappointment means I was wrong to hope for something. I'm not good at being wrong. Nate. Coffee shop. Nobody is. But being right all the time sounds exhausting. Claire smiled despite herself. Claire. It is. I have to get ready for work. Text me later? Nate. Coffee shop. Count on it. Oh, and Claire? You weren't wrong to hope. I'll see you next Friday. Same place, same wobbling table. Claire carried that message with her through her entire day. Through a tense board meeting and a conference call that went sideways, and a lunch she forgot to eat until Marcy literally put a sandwich on her desk with a note that said, "Eat this or I quit." She carried it through budget reviews and contract negotiations, and a moment at 4 p.m. when she realized she was smiling at her computer screen for no reason, except that Nate existed somewhere in the world, probably teaching his son about duck-billed dinosaurs. At 5:30, her phone buzzed. Nate. Coffee shop. Image attached. Claire opened it and found herself looking at a crayon drawing of what was presumably a Parasaurolophus, complete with elaborate coloring and a speech bubble that said, "Hello, Claire's my name is Larry." She laughed so hard her assistant knocked on her office door to make sure she was okay. Claire. Please tell Cooper that Larry is magnificent and I love him. Nate. Coffee shop. He says you're welcome, and also, do you like pizza because that's what we're having for dinner, and you seem nice so you could come over, except Dad says it's too soon for that, but maybe later? Claire's heart stopped, then started again, beating triple time. Claire, tell Cooper that I love pizza, and maybe later sounds perfect. Nate, coffee shop. You're good with kids, I can already tell. Claire, I'm really not. I don't know anything about kids. Nate, coffee shop. You appreciated his dinosaur art and didn't talk down to him. That's basically the entire job description. They texted throughout the weekend, careful messages at first, then longer ones, then entire conversations that spanned hours. Nate sent her pictures of Cooper's latest dinosaur facts, written in careful 7-year-old handwriting. Claire found herself Googling Parasaurolophus habitat at 11 p.m. on Saturday, just so she could text back with something intelligent to say. Nate told her about the treehouse he was building in his backyard, complete with a pulley system for transporting toys. Claire admitted she'd never had a treehouse as a kid, had never even climbed a tree. Nate, coffee shop. That's actually criminal. We're going to have to fix that. Claire, you're going to make me climb a tree? Nate, coffee shop. I'm going to build you a tree to climb. There's a difference. Sunday evening, Claire's phone rang instead of buzzed. She stared at Nate's name on the screen for 3 rings before answering. Hello? Hi. His voice was warm and slightly uncertain. Is this okay, calling instead of texting? It's okay, Claire said, and meant it. She was standing in her kitchen again, the city lights coming on like stars below her. How was your weekend? Long. Good. Cooper and I went to the Natural History Museum, dinosaur exhibit. He made me read every single placard out loud, even though he can read perfectly well himself. He wanted to share it with you. Yeah. Nate's voice softened. Yeah, I think you're right. What about you? How was your weekend? Claire looked around her empty penthouse. She'd worked most of Saturday, answered emails on Sunday morning, gone to the gym because her calendar reminded her to. Efficient, productive, completely hollow. Lonely, she admitted. I worked. I always work. But this weekend I noticed the quiet in a way I usually don't. Like the silence was louder because I knew there was an alternative to it. I'm sorry. Don't be. It's not your fault I've built a life that only works when I'm not paying attention to it. Nate was quiet for a moment. Claire could hear something in the background. Cartoons, maybe, or Cooper's voice asking a question. Hold on, Nate said. Cooper wants to say hi. Before Claire could panic, a young voice came on the line. Hi, Claire. Did you get my dinosaur picture? Claire's throat tightened unexpectedly. Hi, Cooper. I did get it, and it's wonderful. Larry is very handsome. He's a Parasaurolophus, Cooper informed her seriously. They lived in the late Cretaceous period, which was like 75 million years ago. That's a really big number. That is a very big number, Claire agreed. Do you really like dinosaurs, or were you just being nice? Claire smiled. Kid was sharp. I really like them. I don't know as much about them as you do, but I think they're fascinating. Okay, good, because Dad says you're his friend, and I don't want him to have friends who lie about dinosaurs. That would be sad. Cooper, Nate's voice in the background, embarrassed and amused. I would never lie about dinosaurs, Claire said solemnly. That's a promise. Okay, you can talk to Dad now. Bye, Claire. Nate came back on, laughing. I'm so sorry. He's been waiting all weekend to interrogate you about your dinosaur credentials. He's wonderful, Claire said, and was surprised to find she meant it completely. You're doing a good job. I'm trying. Most days I feel like I'm making it up as I go. He paused. Claire, can I ask you something? Are you nervous about Friday? She could lie. Should lie. Should say something breezy and confident about looking forward to it. Instead, she told the truth. Terrified. Me too. Really? Really. I keep thinking about what happens after coffee, after next Friday, after we run out of ways to talk without really knowing each other. Eventually, we have to decide if this is real or just a nice story we'll tell ourselves about the night we almost took a chance. Claire sat down on her couch, phone pressed to her ear. What do you want it to be? I want it to be real, Nate said quietly. But real is complicated. Real means you meet Cooper properly. Real means you see where I live and how I live and all the ways my life is small and simple. Real means I eventually learn your last name and what you do for work and whether who you actually are matches who you've been with me. And that scares you. It terrifies me because I really like who you've been with me, Claire. And I'm afraid that when we add real life to this, whatever this is, it'll break. That the magic only works in coffee shops and text messages. Claire understood exactly what he meant because she was afraid of the same thing. Afraid that the version of herself she'd been with Nate, honest and vulnerable and brave, couldn't survive contact with her actual life. That when he learned she was CEO Claire Hart, the woman profiled in business magazines and known for her ruthless efficiency, he'd see her differently. That the warmth in his voice would cool into something more careful. "So what do we do?" she asked. "I think we show up on Friday and find out. I think we keep being honest even when it's scary. I think we—" He stopped, then continued quietly. "I think we try. Because the alternative is walking away from something before we even know what it could be. And I've spent 7 years playing it safe, and I'm tired of safe." "I've spent 15 years playing it safe," Claire whispered. "Then maybe we're both overdue for brave." They talked for another hour about nothing and everything. About Cooper's bedtime routine and Claire's terrible habit of working until midnight. About Nate's treehouse project and the client who wanted him to build a deck that would basically require defying physics. About fear and hope and the strange courage it took to want something you might not get. When they finally hung up, Claire sat in her dark living room looking at her phone and feeling something shift in her chest, something that felt dangerously like the future. The week crawled by with agonizing slowness. Monday brought a crisis at work, a key supplier backing out of a contract that required every bit of Claire's focus. Tuesday was back-to-back meetings that left her exhausted and irritable. Wednesday, Marcy cornered her in the break room. "Okay, what's going on with you?" Claire looked up from her phone, where she'd been reading Nate's latest message about Cooper's science project, and tried to look innocent. "Nothing. Why?" "Because you've smiled at your phone 6 times in the last hour. You never smile at your phone. You barely smile at humans." Marcy crossed her arms. "Who is he?" "I don't know what you're talking about." "Claire, I've worked for you for 8 years. I know when you're hiding something. So spill, who's the mystery man?" Claire considered lying. Then she thought about what Nate had said about being brave. "I met someone at that blind date you set up." Marcy's eyes went wide. "The lawyer? I knew he was perfect for you." "No, not the lawyer. He never showed. I met someone else. Someone who was also being stood up." Claire couldn't quite meet Marcy's eyes. "We had coffee. We've been talking all week. I'm seeing him again on Friday." Marcy was staring at her like she'd announced she was joining the circus. "You, Claire Hart, had coffee with a stranger and gave him your real phone number." "Yes." "And you're seeing him again?" "Yes." "Who are you and what have you done with my boss?" Claire laughed despite herself. "I don't know. I'm asking myself the same question." Marcy's expression softened. "Is he good to you? Does he make you happy?" Claire thought about Nate's texts, about Cooper's dinosaur drawings, about the way Nate listened like her words actually mattered, like she was more than just the sum of her accomplishments. "Yes," she said quietly, "he makes me happy, and that's terrifying." "Good, terrifying, or bad terrifying?" "I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out." Thursday evening, Claire's phone rang while she was reviewing quarterly reports. Nate's name on the screen made her smile automatically. "Hi," she answered. "Hi, bad time?" "Never a bad time." Claire closed her laptop, giving him her full attention. "What's up?" "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." Claire's stomach dropped. "Okay. Are you sure about tomorrow? Because if you're having second thoughts, or if this is moving too fast, or if you need more time, I'll understand. No hard feelings. I just need to know." Claire heard the vulnerability in his voice, the fear that maybe she'd changed her mind, that maybe the magic of that first night couldn't survive a week of reality. "I'm sure," she said firmly. "I'm scared, but I'm sure. Those aren't mutually exclusive." "No," Nate said, relief evident in his voice. "They're really not." "Are you having second thoughts?" "Every 5 minutes. Then I remember the way you laughed when I told you about the terrible pastries, or how you talked to Cooper like he was a person worth listening to instead of just a kid. And I stop having second thoughts and start counting hours until Friday. How many hours? 22, not that I'm counting. Claire smiled. Not that you're counting. Claire, can I tell you something I've been thinking about all week? When I met you, you were wearing borrowed clothes and a fake name, like you were in disguise. And I keep wondering who you were hiding from, the world or yourself. The question hit Claire like a physical blow, because it was the right question, the one she'd been avoiding asking herself. Both, she admitted. I've spent so long being a certain version of myself, the version that's successful and independent and doesn't need anyone, that I forgot there could be other versions. When I put on those jeans and that sweater, I was trying to be someone else, someone simpler. But you're not simple, Nate said gently. And I don't want simple Claire. I want real Claire, even if real is complicated. Real Claire is really complicated. Good. I like puzzles. They talked until Cooper needed help with his bath, until Claire's eyes were too tired to focus on screens anymore, until the city below her windows had gone from golden to dark. When they hung up, Claire felt something settle in her chest. Not certainty. She was too realistic for that, but something close to peace. Friday arrived with the kind of nervous energy that made concentration impossible. Claire rescheduled 2 meetings and left work at 5, practically unheard of, to go home and change. She stood in her closet for 20 minutes, trying to decide between the borrowed clothes version of herself and the real version. Finally, she chose something in between. Jeans that actually belonged to her, a soft sweater in deep blue, boots that were comfortable instead of impressive. She looked in the mirror and saw someone she almost recognized. The coffee shop was warm and crowded when she arrived at 6:55. Claire scanned the room and found Nate already there, sitting at their wobbling table with 2 coffees already ordered. When he saw her, his face lit up with a smile that made her forget every rational reason she had for being careful. "Hi," he said as she slid into the chair across from him. "Hi yourself." They looked at each other for a moment, grinning like idiots, before Nate pushed one of the coffees toward her. Black and terrible, as promised. "You remembered." "I remember everything about that night." His voice was quiet but intense. "The way you looked when you admitted you were lonely, the way you laughed at the pastries, the way you held my hand before I left, like you were afraid I wouldn't come back." "I was afraid you wouldn't come back." "I came back," Nate said simply. "I'm here." "So am I." They fell into easy conversation, picking up threads from their texts and phone calls. But there was a weight to tonight that hadn't been there before, an awareness that they were standing at a crossroads, that coffee and conversation could only carry them so far before they had to decide what this actually was. "I've been thinking," Claire said, stirring her coffee even though she drank it black, "about what you said, about real life, about how eventually we have to know each other outside of coffee shops and text messages. Me too. I'm afraid that when you know the whole truth about me, about my life and my work, and how I spend my time, you'll see me differently." Nate reached across the table and covered her hand with his. His palm was warm, calloused, solid. "Claire, I already know the important things. I know you're brave enough to be vulnerable, smart enough to ask hard questions, kind enough to care about a 7-year-old's dinosaur drawings. Whatever else there is, whatever you do for work or where you live or how you spend your money, those are just details. They're not you. But they're part of me, a big part. What if that part doesn't fit with your life? Then we figure it out, together." He squeezed her hand gently. "But we can't figure anything out if we don't try, if we keep hiding in this safe space where we don't have to risk anything real." Claire took a deep breath. This was it. The moment where she either told the truth or kept hiding behind the fiction of Claire without a last name. "I'm a CEO," she said quietly. "I run a tech company. 8 years ago, I built it from nothing, and now we have 300 employees and offices in 4 cities, and I make decisions every day that affect people's lives and livelihoods. I work 16-hour days. I eat lunch at my desk. I sleep in my office sometimes because it's easier than going home. My life is consumed by work because I let it be consumed, because it was easier to build an empire than to build a life." She waited for his expression to change. for the warmth to cool into calculation, for him to start seeing dollar signs instead of her. But Nate just nodded slowly. That's what you do, not who you are. It's a big part of who I am. Okay, then tell me this. When you're building your empire and making your decisions, what matters to you? What are you actually trying to accomplish? Claire blinked, surprised by the question. No one had ever asked her that before. She stopped, thinking, I want to build something that lasts, something that proves I was here, that I mattered. I want my work to mean something beyond profit margins and stock prices. I want the people who work for me to feel like they're part of something important. So you're not just chasing money or power, you're trying to build something meaningful. Yes, I mean, the money and power are nice, but Claire laughed despite herself. God, that sounds terrible. It sounds honest. Nate smiled. Claire, I don't care if you're a CEO or a janitor or the person who names paint colors. I care that you showed up to a restaurant under a fake name because you were terrified of wanting someone. I care that you gave me your real number even though it scared you. I care that you text me back every time even though you're busy running a company. That's who you are. Claire felt tears prick her eyes. Your turn. My turn? Tell me the truth about your life, the whole truth. Nate took a breath. I'm a contractor. I build things, decks, additions, custom furniture. I'm good at it. I make enough to support me and Cooper and save a little. My house is 1,500 square feet in a town you've probably never heard of. I drive a truck that's 12 years old. I can't afford fancy restaurants or vacations to Europe. My idea of a big night out is mini golf and ice cream. He met her eyes steadily. I'm not going to suddenly become wealthy or sophisticated. This is it. This is my life. And I need you to know that before we go any further. Do you love it? Claire asked. Your life. Your work. I do. I love working with my hands. I love that when I finish a project, I can step back and see something tangible that I made. I love coming home to Cooper covered in sawdust. I love the simplicity of it. Then why do you sound apologetic? Because Nate gestured vaguely. You're this incredibly successful, powerful woman, and I'm a guy who builds porches. I'm worried that eventually you'll realize I can't give you the kind of life you're used to, that I'm not enough. Claire pulled her hand free from his, and Nate's face fell. But she only moved so she could take both his hands in hers, holding tight. Listen to me, she said fiercely. I've spent 15 years building a life that looks impressive from the outside and feels empty from the inside. I have a penthouse I barely live in and a calendar full of meetings with people whose names I can't remember. I have everything I thought I wanted and nothing that actually matters. So don't apologize for building a life with meaning. Don't apologize for loving your work and your son and your 1,500 square foot house. That's not less than what I have. It might actually be more. Nate stared at her, something raw and hopeful in his eyes. You really mean that? I really mean that. So where does that leave us? Claire looked at their joined hands on the terrible coffee shop table, at this man who'd somehow seen past every wall she'd built and still wanted to know her anyway. I think it leaves us trying, she said. I think it leaves us being brave enough to figure out if this can work outside of coffee shops and text messages. I think, she took a breath, I think I want to meet Cooper properly. See your house, watch you build something, and I want you to see my office and understand what I do all day and meet the people who work for me. I want us to see each other's real lives and find out if we still fit. That's terrifying. I know. What if we don't fit? Then at least we tried. At least we didn't walk away from something without knowing what it could be. Nate smiled, that sad, hopeful smile that had caught her attention that first night. You're really something, Claire Hart. Claire froze. How did you? I Googled CEO tech company, 8 years, 300 employees while I was waiting for you to get here. There aren't that many options. He squeezed her hands. I wanted to know what I was walking into, what your real life looked like. And you know what I found? Articles about the Ice Queen of Tech? Articles about a woman who started with nothing and built something extraordinary, who treats her employees like humans instead of resources, who turned down 3 acquisition offers because she wouldn't sell unless the buyers guaranteed no layoffs, someone who's ruthless in business but protective of her people. He smiled. I found someone worth being brave for. Claire felt something crack open in her chest. You researched me. I did. Was that crossing a line? No, it was smart. She laughed shakily. I almost Googled you too, but I didn't know your last name. It's Wilder, Nate Wilder. I'm 41. I live at 2847 Maple Drive in Riverside. I have a son named Cooper who's 7 and obsessed with dinosaurs. I've been a widower for 7 years. I'm bad at dating and good at building things, and I'm sitting here with you wondering how I got this lucky. Lucky? To meet someone who makes me want to be brave again. Who makes me remember that life is supposed to be more than just getting through it. He stood up, still holding one of her hands. Come on. Where are we going? Out of this coffee shop. Into the world. Into real life. He pulled her gently to her feet. I want to show you something. They left the coffee shop and walked through the city streets, hands linked, neither speaking. Claire felt the weight of the evening, of everything they'd confessed, sitting between them. But it wasn't a heavy weight. It was the weight of possibility. Nate led her to a small park 3 blocks away. It was mostly empty, a few joggers, a man walking his dog, the last light of day painting everything golden. In the center of the park stood an old oak tree with branches that reached toward the sky like prayers. This, Nate said, stopping beneath it, this is where I come when I need to think. When work gets complicated, or Cooper's struggling with something, or I just need to remember that the world is bigger than my problems. Claire looked up through the branches at the darkening sky. It's beautiful. I want to build you that treehouse here, Nate said quietly. Well, not here exactly. That would be illegal and also weird. But in a tree like this, I want to build something just for you, a place where you can come and remember that you're more than your work, that you deserve to have something just because it brings you joy. Claire turned to look at him. You barely know me. I know enough. I know you're brave and scared in equal measure. I know you work too hard and laugh too rarely. I know you gave a 7-year-old serious consideration about dinosaurs when you could have brushed him off. I know, his voice cracked slightly. I know that when I think about the future now, you're in it, and that terrifies me and excites me and makes me want to build you something beautiful just to prove I can. Nate, you don't have to say anything. I'm not asking for promises or commitments. I just want you to know that this, us, it matters to me. You matter to me. And whatever happens next, I'm glad we tried. Claire stood in this golden light beneath the oak tree and felt something fundamental shift inside her. All her careful walls, all her calculated defenses, all the protection she'd built around her heart, suddenly it all felt exhausting, heavy, unnecessary. She stepped closer to Nate and kissed him. It was soft and tentative and perfect. His hands came up to cup her face, gentle and sure, and Claire felt herself leaning into the touch like a plant toward sunlight. When they pulled apart, both breathing slightly harder, Nate smiled at her with such open joy that Claire felt her eyes sting with tears. Was that okay? She whispered. That was more than okay. He rested his forehead against hers. That was worth every scared moment of the last week. They stood there in the park as the light faded and the city came alive around them. 2 people who'd met by accident and chosen each other on purpose. 2 people being brave enough to try. Come to dinner tomorrow night, Nate said. At my house. Meet Cooper properly. See my life. And if it's too much or too fast or too anything, we can slow down. But I want you to see who I am when I'm not dressed up for coffee dates. I want you to see the real version. Claire thought about her penthouse and her empty weekends, about the life she'd built that looked perfect from the outside and felt hollow from within. About this man who wanted to build her a treehouse just to prove she deserved something beautiful. Okay, she said. Tomorrow. What should I bring? Just yourself. Nate smiled. That's all I want. They walked back through the city streets, hands linked, talking about everything and nothing. When they reached the corner where they'd eventually have to part ways, Nate to catch his train, Claire to her apartment building, neither wanted to let go. Text me your address, Claire said. I'll be there at 6. 6 is perfect. Cooper will have 17 dinosaur facts prepared for you. I look forward to all 17. Nate kissed her once more, quickly and sweetly, then stepped back with visible effort. Tomorrow, then. Tomorrow. Claire watched him walk away, then turned toward home. Her phone buzzed before she'd made it 2 blocks. Nate, coffee shop. I'm already counting hours again. 15 until I see you. Claire smiled at her phone on a busy city street, not caring who saw. Claire, not that you're counting. Nate, coffee shop. Not that I'm counting. Sleep well, Claire Hart. Claire, sleep well, Nate Wilder. She walked the rest of the way home in a daze of happiness and terror, her lips still tingling from his kiss, her hand still warm from his touch. Tomorrow she'd meet his son and see his house and step fully into his life. Tomorrow she'd stop hiding behind borrowed clothes and fake names and start being brave enough to want something real. Tomorrow, everything would change. And for the first time in 15 years, Claire couldn't wait. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of bright autumn sunshine that made everything feel possible. Claire stood in her closet at 8 a.m., 10 hours before she was supposed to be at Nate's house, trying to decide what a person wore to meet a 7-year-old dinosaur expert and his contractor father. Every outfit she owned suddenly felt wrong. Too formal, too expensive, too much like armor. Her phone buzzed on the dresser. Nate, coffee shop. Cooper woke me up at 6:30 to inform me that we need to clean the house because ladies notice when things are messy. I have no idea where he learned this, but I'm now vacuuming at 8 a.m. on a Saturday. Claire laughed out loud, the sound surprising her in the quiet apartment. Claire, tell Cooper the lady appreciates the effort, but honestly doesn't care about mess. I'm more nervous about passing the dinosaur quiz. Nate, coffee shop. There will definitely be a dinosaur quiz. He's making flashcards right now. I'm not joking. Claire, I'm studying. I know that Parasaurolophus means near-crested lizard and lived in the late Cretaceous period. Nate, coffee shop. You actually studied? Claire, you're going to make him fall in love with you immediately. Claire stared at that message, her heart doing something complicated in her chest. The casual way Nate had used the word love, even about his son, even playfully, made her realize how little that word appeared in her actual life. How long it had been since she'd let anyone close enough to even consider it. Claire, is that allowed? Falling in love immediately? The typing indicator appeared and disappeared 3 times. Claire held her breath. Nate, coffee shop. I think sometimes the heart knows before the head catches up. Is that terrifying? Claire, completely. I'll see you at 6. She spent the rest of the morning in a state of productive anxiety, cleaning her already immaculate apartment and trying not to check the clock every 5 minutes. At noon, Marcy called. So, her assistant said without preamble, how did last night go? It went well. Well? That's all I get? Claire, you left work at 5 on a Friday. 5. You never leave at 5. We had coffee, we talked, it was nice. And? Claire sighed. And I'm going to his house tonight to meet his son. Dead silence on the other end. Then, I'm sorry, did you just say you're meeting his child? You, Claire, I don't do personal attachments, heart. I'm trying something new, Claire said defensively. I'm trying to be brave. Marcy's voice softened immediately. Good. You deserve to be brave. You deserve to be happy. Just be careful, okay? I know you. When you fall hard, and you haven't let yourself fall in years. I know. But I'm rooting for you. Whatever happens tonight, I'm rooting for you. After they hung up, Claire stood in her living room looking at the city stretching out below her windows. Marcy was right. She hadn't let herself fall in years. Hadn't let anyone close enough to matter. And now she was about to walk into the life of a man she'd known for barely 2 weeks and his 7-year-old son who made dinosaur flashcards for guests. At 4 o'clock, Claire finally got dressed. Jeans. Her own this time. A soft gray sweater. Boots that were practical instead of impressive. She looked in the mirror and saw someone she was learning to recognize. Someone who was trying. She stopped at a bookstore on the way to Riverside, spending 20 minutes in the children's section before finally selecting a book about dinosaurs with detailed illustrations and actual scientific information. Nothing condescending. Nothing that would insult a 7-year-old's intelligence. The drive to Nate's house took 40 minutes through Saturday afternoon traffic. Claire's hands were sweating on the steering wheel by the time she pulled onto Maple Drive. The houses here were modest but well kept. Small yards with toys scattered across them. Driveways with basketball hoops. The kind of neighborhood where people actually knew their neighbors' names. Number 2847 was a pale blue Craftsman with white trim and a porch that looked recently rebuilt. The yard was neat but lived in, with a tire swing hanging from an oak tree and what appeared to be the beginnings of a treehouse platform in the branches. Claire sat in her car for a full minute, gathering courage. Before she could talk herself out of it, the front door opened. Cooper came flying down the porch steps, Nate following at a more measured pace. The boy stopped at the edge of the walkway, suddenly shy, while Nate walked up to Claire's car with a smile that made her forget every reason she had for being nervous. "You came," he said as she got out. "Did you think I wouldn't?" "I was maybe 5% worried you'd realize this was insane and bail." "Only 5%? Okay, 20. Nate reached out and squeezed her hand briefly. "I'm glad you're here." Cooper approached carefully, studying Claire with the serious expression of someone conducting an evaluation. He was small for 7, with Nate's dark hair and eyes that were several shades lighter. His mother's eyes, Claire realized with a pang. "Hi, Cooper," Claire said, crouching down to his level. "I'm Claire. Your dad's told me a lot about you." "Did he tell you about the Parasaurolophus?" "He did, and I brought you something." She held out the book. "I thought maybe we could look at it together later?" Cooper took the book with reverent hands, studying the cover with wide eyes. "This has the new research about hadrosaur vocalizations," he breathed. "Dad, she got the one with the new research." "I see that, buddy." Cooper looked up at Claire with something approaching awe. "Thank you. This is really cool." "You're welcome. Thank you for letting me come to dinner." "Well, Dad says you're important to him," Cooper said with the devastating honesty of children. "Are you going to be his girlfriend?" "Cooper." Nate's voice held embarrassment and amusement in equal measure. "It's okay," Claire said quickly. "That's a fair question." She looked at Cooper seriously. "I really like your dad, and I really like you already. So maybe? If that would be okay with you?" Cooper considered this gravely. "Okay, but you have to promise not to be mean to him. My friend Zach's dad had a girlfriend who was mean, and it made everyone sad. I promise not to be mean to him. And you have to like dinosaurs, at least a little bit." "I like dinosaurs at least a medium amount. Is that enough?" Cooper grinned. "Yeah, that's enough. Come on, I'll show you my room." He grabbed Claire's hand with complete trust and tugged her toward the house. Claire looked back at Nate, who was watching them with an expression so tender it made her throat tight. "You passed the test," Nate mouthed. Inside, the house was exactly what Claire expected and nothing like her own space. It was small and lived in, with furniture that had clearly been chosen for durability over style. But it was warm. There were crayon drawings taped to the refrigerator and a bookshelf overflowing with both adult novels and children's books. A basket of toys sat in the corner of the living room. Photos covered every surface. Cooper as a baby, Nate and Cooper building the tire swing, a wedding photo of Nate with a woman who had Cooper's light eyes and warm smile. Cooper led Claire down a hallway to a bedroom that was painted blue and covered in glow-in-the-dark stars. Dinosaur posters competed for wall space with more crayon drawings. A shelf displayed rocks and fossils arranged with careful pride. "This is my collection," Cooper announced. "I found most of them at the quarry near Grandma's house. This one might be from a triceratops, but Dad says it's probably just a weird rock." "It's definitely a weird rock, buddy," Nate said from the doorway. "You don't know that for sure." Cooper turned to Claire. "Do you want to see my flashcards?" "I would love to see your flashcards." For the next 20 minutes, Claire sat on Cooper's bedroom floor being quizzed on dinosaur facts. She got about 60% correct, which Cooper informed her was pretty good for a beginner. Nate watched from the doorway, not saying anything, just observing the way Claire listened to his son with genuine interest instead of polite tolerance. "Okay, buddy," Nate said eventually. "Claire probably wants to see something other than your dinosaur collection. Let's go start dinner." "Can Claire help me make the salad?" Cooper asked. "I'm supposed to be learning responsibility in the kitchen." "If Claire wants to help you make the salad, she's welcome to." Claire stood up, brushing off her jeans. I would love to help make the salad. In the kitchen, Cooper took his job very seriously. He showed Claire where everything was kept, explained his technique for washing lettuce, and gave her very specific instructions on how to cut tomatoes. Nate worked at the stove, making what smelled like homemade marinara sauce, occasionally glancing over at them with that same tender expression. "So Claire," Cooper said, concentrating hard on tearing lettuce, "what do you do for your job?" Claire looked at Nate, who raised his eyebrows as if to say, "Your call." "I work with computers," Claire said carefully. "I help run a company that makes programs and apps that help people do their jobs better." "Like games?" "Not exactly. More like tools. Imagine if you had a really complicated dinosaur collection to organize, and you needed a special notebook that could sort them by time period or location or size. That's the kind of thing we make, except for grown-up jobs." Cooper nodded thoughtfully. "That sounds useful. Do you like it?" "Most of the time, but sometimes I work too much and forget to do other things, like make salad or learn about dinosaurs." "You should work less," Cooper said, with the certainty of someone who understood priorities. "Dad says people who work all the time forget how to have fun." Claire glanced at Nate, who looked embarrassed. "Cooper, that's not—" "No, he's right," Claire interrupted. "I do work too much. I'm trying to get better at that. Dad's teaching me balance," Cooper continued, clearly pleased to share his wisdom. "He says you have to work hard but also play hard and rest hard. That way you don't get burned out." "Burned out," Nate corrected gently. "That's what I said." Dinner was simple but perfect. Spaghetti with Nate's marinara sauce, the salad Cooper and Claire had made together, and garlic bread that Nate admitted came from the grocery store bakery. They ate at a kitchen table that was slightly too small for 3 people but somehow exactly right. Cooper dominated the conversation, asking Claire approximately 1,000,000 questions about everything from her favorite color to whether she'd ever seen a real fossil to what kind of car she drove. "A Mercedes," Claire answered honestly. "It's probably too fancy, but I like the safety ratings." "Dad's truck is really old, but he says it's reliable," Cooper informed her. "Reliable means it always works even if it's not pretty." "Reliability is underrated," Claire said, looking at Nate. After dinner, Cooper asked if Claire could help with bath time. Nate hesitated, clearly worried it was too much, too fast, but Claire found herself nodding before she could overthink it. She sat on the bathroom floor while Cooper played with toy boats and explained the difference between aquatic and marine dinosaurs. Nate handled the actual washing, but Claire's presence seemed to matter to Cooper, who kept glancing at her to make sure she was paying attention. "Time to get out, buddy," Nate said finally. "Bedtime in 20 minutes." While Cooper got into his pajamas, Claire and Nate stood in the hallway. They hadn't been alone since she'd arrived, hadn't had a chance to check in with each other about how this was going. "Is this okay?" Nate asked quietly. He's being very enthusiastic. "If it's overwhelming—" "It's not overwhelming. He's wonderful, Nate. You're doing an incredible job with him. He really likes you. He hasn't taken to someone new this quickly since—" Nate stopped, his expression complicated. "Since his mom," Claire finished softly. "Yeah. And I don't know if that's good or concerning, if he's attaching too fast because he wants so badly for me to be happy. Or maybe he's just a good judge of character," Claire suggested. "Maybe he can tell when someone genuinely cares." "Do you care?" Claire looked at this man in his small hallway, covered in family photos, and felt something crack open in her chest. "Yes, I care. More than I thought possible after 2 weeks." Cooper appeared in his dinosaur pajamas, clutching the book Claire had brought. "Will you read to me? Dad always does 1 chapter before bed." Claire glanced at Nate, who nodded encouragingly. "I'd love to." Cooper's room was transformed at night, the glow-in-the-dark stars casting soft light across the ceiling, creating a planetarium effect. Cooper climbed into bed and patted the space beside him. Claire sat carefully, and Cooper immediately snuggled against her side with the easy trust of a child who'd been raised with love. She opened the book and began to read about hadrosaur vocalizations and fossil evidence. Cooper interrupted occasionally with additional facts or questions, but mostly he just listened, his breathing gradually slowing as sleep crept up on him. When Claire finished the chapter, Cooper's eyes were half closed. "Claire?" "Yeah, buddy." "I'm glad you came. You make my dad smile the way he used to. Before." Claire's throat tightened. Before? Before Mom went to heaven. He smiles now, but usually it's just for me. With you, he smiles for real. Claire didn't trust her voice, so she just smoothed Cooper's hair back from his forehead. Your dad is a very good man. I know, that's why he deserves someone nice. Cooper yawned. You're nice, even if you didn't know about duck-billed dinosaurs. I'm learning. That's okay. Mom always said learning is more important than knowing. Nate appeared in the doorway, leaning against the frame. Time to sleep, Coop. Okay. Night, Dad. Night, Claire. Good night, Cooper, Claire whispered. She stood and followed Nate out, pulling the door mostly closed behind them. In the hallway, Nate looked at her with eyes that were suspiciously bright. Thank you, he said quietly, for being so good with him, for not treating him like an obligation. He's not an obligation. He's... Claire stopped, searching for words. He's the best part of you, Nate. Of course I'd be good to him. Nate stepped closer, his hand coming up to cup her face. You're remarkable, Claire Hart. I'm trying. You're succeeding. He kissed her softly, carefully, aware that his son was just down the hall. When they pulled apart, Claire rested her forehead against his chest, feeling his heartbeat steady and strong beneath her cheek. Come on, Nate said. Let me show you the treehouse. They walked out into the backyard where the autumn evening had turned crisp and clear. The platform in the oak tree was about 8 feet off the ground, solid and well built, even though it was clearly unfinished. I started it last spring, Nate explained, helping Claire up the ladder. Got the platform done, and then work got busy, but I'm thinking about finishing it now, maybe making it special. They sat on the platform with their legs dangling over the edge. Claire could see the lights of the house through the tree branches, warm and inviting. From here, Nate's whole life was visible. The small house he'd filled with love, the yard where his son played, the neighborhood where he'd built a simple, meaningful existence. This is a good life, Nate, Claire said softly. It's a small life. Small isn't bad. Small means you can actually see what matters. In my life, everything is so big and spread out that I lost track of what any of it means. She turned to look at him. Here, you know what matters. You live it every day. I'm still worried, Nate admitted, that you'll realize how different our lives are. That you'll wake up one day and think about what you're giving up to be with someone like me. What would I be giving up? I don't know. Your freedom, your focus, the ability to work 16-hour days without someone asking where you are. Claire laughed, but was sad. Nate, that's not freedom. That's a prison I built myself. You're not asking me to give up anything worth keeping. But your work matters to you, your company, your success. I would never ask you to choose between that and this. You're not asking. I'm choosing. Claire took his hand. I've spent 15 years building a company. And it's good work, important work. But I've neglected everything else. I want... She stopped, the words catching in her throat. I want balance. I want what you and Cooper have, real connection, real life. I want to learn how to be a whole person instead of just a successful one. That's going to be hard, Nate said gently. Changing your whole life, finding balance when you're used to all or nothing. I know, but I think you and Cooper might be worth the effort. Nate pulled her closer, his arm around her shoulders. They sat in the treehouse in comfortable silence, watching the stars appear one by one in the darkening sky. Claire, I have to tell you something. Okay. I'm falling in love with you, fast and hard and in a way that terrifies me. And I know it's only been 2 weeks and that's insane, but Cooper's right. You make me smile for real. You make me remember who I was before grief turned me into someone who was just surviving. And I need you to know that before we go any further, because if this isn't what you want, if I'm more invested than you are, I need to protect Cooper and myself. Claire's heart hammered against her ribs. This was the moment, the place where she could protect herself, pull back, keep things casual and safe. Or she could be brave. I'm falling for you too, she whispered. And it's terrifying, because I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to balance a relationship with my work. I don't know how to be someone's girlfriend or a part of Cooper's life or any of the things you deserve, but I want to learn. I want to try. That's all I'm asking. Just try. They kissed again, deeper this time, with the weight of their confessions hanging between them. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Nate rested his forehead against hers. "Stay," he said quietly, "not for sex or anything like that. Just stay. Sleep in the guest room. Have breakfast with us in the morning. Let me show you what Sunday mornings look like here." Claire thought about her empty penthouse waiting for her across town, about the emails she should be answering and the work she should be doing, about the version of herself that would never ever spend the night at a man's house after 2 weeks of knowing him. "Okay," she said, "I'll stay." The guest room was small but cozy, with a bed that had clearly been made up hastily that evening. Nate brought her a t-shirt to sleep in, one of his, soft from washing, and showed her where to find everything she might need. "Thank you for today," he said from the doorway. "For being patient with Cooper. For being here." "Thank you for letting me in," Claire replied. "For trusting me with your life." After he left, Claire changed into Nate's shirt and climbed into the unfamiliar bed. She could hear the house settling around her, Nate moving around in his room down the hall, the old heating system clicking on, the sound of suburban Saturday night through the window. All the small noises of a lived-in life. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A work email from her COO about the merger, then another from legal, then 3 more that required her attention. Claire looked at them for a long moment. Then she turned off her phone and set it face down. Tomorrow was Sunday. Tomorrow she would have breakfast with Nate and Cooper and learn what it felt like to be part of a family instead of apart from everything. Tomorrow she would take one more step toward the person she wanted to be. Tonight, she would sleep in a borrowed t-shirt in a small house with people who were starting to matter more than spreadsheets. And for the first time in 15 years, that felt like exactly where she belonged. Sunday morning came soft and slow. Claire woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of Cooper's laughter drifting down the hallway. For a disoriented moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then it all came back. The dinner, the bedtime story, the conversation in the treehouse, Nate's words about falling in love. She got dressed quickly and followed the sounds to the kitchen. Nate stood at the stove making pancakes while Cooper sat at the table arranging dinosaur toys in careful formations. They both looked up when she appeared. "Morning," Nate said, his smile warm and intimate. "Coffee? Please." "Did you sleep okay?" Cooper asked. "The guest room is kind of small." "I slept great," Claire assured him. "Best sleep I've had in months, actually." It was true. Something about being in this house, surrounded by the evidence of love and care, had let her relax in a way she couldn't in her expensive penthouse with its perfect silence. Breakfast was chaotic in the best way. Cooper wanted to tell Claire about every single dinosaur fact he'd learned from the book she'd brought. Nate kept adding pancakes to her plate every time she finished one. The conversation was easy and natural, like she'd been having breakfast with them for years instead of one morning. When it was time for Claire to leave, Cooper hugged her with the unself-conscious affection of a child who decided she was worth keeping. "You'll come back, right?" he asked, looking up at her with worried eyes. "I'll come back," Claire promised, "if your dad invites me." "I'm inviting you right now," Nate said. "Next weekend. And every weekend after that, if you want." "I want." Nate walked her out to her car, Cooper waving from the porch. In the driveway, surrounded by the suburban morning, they faced each other with the awkwardness of new lovers saying goodbye. "Thank you for staying," Nate said. "For giving us a chance. Thank you for having me, for trusting me with Cooper. He's crazy about you already. We both are." Claire kissed him once more, soft and quick, aware of Cooper watching. "I'll call you tonight. I'll be waiting." As Claire drove back toward the city, she felt something fundamental had shifted. She'd crossed a threshold. She'd stopped imagining what a real life might look like and had started actually living one. Her phone buzzed as soon as she turned it back on. 17 work emails. 4 texts from Marcy asking how it went, and 1 message from Nate, sent just minutes ago. "Nate. Coffee shop. Cooper says you're his favorite person now besides me and Grandma. I think I might be a little jealous. Come back soon?" Claire smiled at her phone in Saturday morning traffic. "Claire, I'm already counting the days. Thank you for yesterday, for everything." She drove back to her penthouse with her heart full and her mind racing. Because she'd spent one night in Riverside and now nothing about her carefully constructed life felt quite right anymore. Her apartment felt too big, too empty. Her calendar felt too full of obligations that didn't matter. Everything had changed, and Claire couldn't wait to see what came next. The following week unfolded like a revelation, each day peeling back another layer of the life Claire had built and exposing what lay underneath. Monday morning, she arrived at the office at 7:30 instead of 6, practically sleeping in by her usual standards, and found herself distracted during the executive meeting. Her COO was presenting quarterly projections when Claire's phone buzzed with a photo from Nate, Cooper holding up a drawing of the three of them under a tree, all stick figures and bright crayon sunshine. "Claire?" Her COO's voice pulled her back. "Your thoughts on the timeline?" Claire looked up to find 8 executives staring at her expectantly. She'd completely missed the question. "I'm sorry," she said, and the words felt foreign in her mouth. Claire Hart never apologized for not paying attention. "Could you repeat that?" After the meeting, Marcy cornered her in her office. "Okay, what's going on? You smiled at your phone during a budget presentation. You smiled during budgets." Claire tried to look professional. "I'm allowed to smile." "Not during budget presentations. You're not. It's practically against your religion." Marcy crossed her arms. "This is about the guy, isn't it? The coffee shop guy." "His name is Nate." "And?" Claire hesitated. Then she turned her computer screen toward Marcy, showing Cooper's drawing that she'd set as her background. "And he has a 7-year-old son who draws pictures of us as a family after knowing me for one weekend." Marcy's eyes widened. "Claire, that's—" "I know. That's moving really fast. I know that too. Are you okay with it? Moving this fast?" Claire looked at the drawing, at Cooper's careful attempt to capture something he'd decided he wanted, at the way he'd drawn her holding hands with both him and Nate. "I'm terrified, but yes, I'm okay with it." Marcy studied her for a long moment. "You look different. Lighter, maybe. Like you've been carrying something heavy and finally set it down." "Maybe I have." Claire closed her laptop. "Marcy, can I ask you something? Do you think it's possible to change your entire life at 42? To realize you've been doing everything wrong and try to start over?" "I think it's possible at any age, but it's hard, really hard. You'd be giving up a lot of control." "Maybe control is overrated." Marcy smiled. "Now I know you're in love. The old Claire Hart would never say that." The week continued in that same strange duality. Claire went through the motions of running her company, meetings, decisions, strategy sessions, but part of her mind was always elsewhere. In Riverside, wondering what Nate and Cooper were doing, planning what she'd cook when it was her turn to make dinner, thinking about the treehouse Nate wanted to build and whether she could help. She and Nate texted throughout each day, little windows into each other's lives. He sent her photos of the deck he was building for a client. She sent him pictures of her office view at sunset. He told her about Cooper's latest school project, a diorama of the Mesozoic era that involved an alarming amount of papier-mâché. She admitted she'd never made papier-mâché in her life. "We'll have to fix that," Nate had texted back. "Emergency papier-mâché session this weekend." Tuesday night, they talked on the phone for 2 hours. Claire lay on her couch in her empty penthouse while Nate sat on his back porch after Cooper's bedtime, and they talked about everything: his late wife, her absent parents, the ways they'd both learned to protect themselves, and the cost of that protection. "Sarah was my high school sweetheart," Nate said quietly. "We got married young, too young everyone said, but we were so sure. And then Cooper came along and we were just happy, building this simple life together. And then one random Tuesday, she went to the grocery store and never came home. Wrong place, wrong time. Some kid texting while driving. I'm so sorry, Nate. The worst part wasn't losing her, as terrible as that sounds. The worst part was having to keep going, having a 6-month-old who needed me to be okay when I wasn't okay at all, learning to be both parents, learning to survive when surviving was the last thing I wanted to do." Claire's throat tightened. "But you did it. You survived and you built something beautiful for Cooper." "I did, but I also closed myself off, told myself that loving Sarah and Cooper was enough, that wanting anything for myself was selfish. And I lived like that for 7 years, Claire. Just existing, just getting through each day." He paused. "Until you." Until me, Claire echoed softly. Until you walked into that restaurant looking like you were trying to disappear, and I realized I'd been trying to disappear too, that we were both hiding in plain sight. Wednesday afternoon, Claire left work at 4 to pick up supplies for a surprise project. She'd been thinking about Cooper's comment that she'd never made papier-mâché, about all the normal childhood experiences she'd missed while building her empire. So she bought construction paper and glue and paint and decided to learn. That evening, alone in her penthouse, Claire Hart, CEO of a multi-million-dollar tech company, sat on her living room floor making a papier-mâché volcano while watching YouTube tutorials. It was messy and imperfect, and she loved every minute of it. She sent Nate a photo of her glue-covered hands with the caption, "Learning new skills." His response was immediate. "You're incredible. Cooper is going to lose his mind." Thursday brought complications. Claire's biggest client called with concerns about the merger, threatening to pull their contract if the transition wasn't handled exactly right. It was the kind of crisis that would normally consume her completely, that would have her working through the night to solve. Instead, she delegated to her executive team, trusting them to handle it, and left the office at 6 to have dinner with Marcy. "You delegated a crisis," Marcy said over wine and pasta. "You never delegate crises." "I'm trying something radical. It's called work-life balance." "And how does it feel?" Claire considered. "Terrifying, like I'm waiting for everything to fall apart because I'm not controlling every detail. But also liberating, like maybe the world won't end if I'm not personally solving every problem." "The world definitely won't end. Your team is excellent. You hired them to be excellent." Marcy swirled her wine. "So when do I get to meet this miracle man who's teaching Claire Hart about balance?" "Soon. Maybe. I don't know. It feels too new to share with everyone yet. Like if I talk about it too much, I'll realize it's not real." "It's real, Claire. I can see it all over your face. You're happy." The word landed like a revelation. Happy. When was the last time Claire had been happy? Not satisfied or accomplished or successful, actually happy. She couldn't remember. Friday afternoon, Claire was in a strategy meeting when her phone rang. Nate never called during work hours. They'd established that boundary early. Her stomach dropped. Something was wrong. "I need to take this," she said, already standing. 5-minute break. She stepped into the hallway and answered. "Nate, what's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Well, something's wrong, but it's okay. Cooper's fine." He sounded stressed, but not panicked. "The school just called. He's got a fever. I'm leaving the job site now to pick him up, but I'm 40 minutes away and—" He stopped. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have called. I just needed to hear your voice for a second." Claire's heart squeezed. "Do you need help? I can leave right now. I can pick him up." "Pick him." "Claire, you're at work. You can't just leave." "Watch me." She was already walking toward her office, grabbing her bag. "Text me the school address. I'll get him and take him to your house. Do you have a key hidden somewhere?" "Under the turtle planter on the porch. But Claire—" "Nate, let me help, please." The silence on the other end felt significant. Then, "Okay, thank you. His teacher's name is Ms. Rodriguez. She knows about you. Cooper talks about you constantly, apparently." Claire was already in the elevator. "I'm leaving now. I'll text you when I have him." She poked her head back into the conference room. "Family emergency. Marcy, you're running point. I'll be back Monday." The drive to Riverside took 35 minutes in Friday afternoon traffic. Claire spent the entire time gripping the steering wheel and trying not to panic. She'd never picked up a sick kid before. Never been the emergency contact. Never been trusted with this level of responsibility for someone else's child. The school was small and friendly, with construction paper decorations covering every wall. Claire found the main office and introduced herself to the secretary, who looked at her with knowing eyes. "You must be Ms. Hart. Cooper's been talking about his dad's friend Claire all week. Ms. Rodriguez has him in the nurse's office." Cooper was curled up on a cot, looking miserable, his teacher sitting beside him reading quietly. When he saw Claire, his face transformed. "You came," he said, voice hoarse. "Of course I came." Claire crouched beside the cot. "Your dad's on his way, but he's stuck in traffic, so you're stuck with me for a bit. Is that okay?" "Yeah." Cooper reached for her hand. "My throat hurts." I know, buddy. Let's get you home and comfortable. Ms. Rodriguez helped Claire gather Cooper's backpack and coat, giving her instructions about the fever and when to call the doctor. He's such a sweet boy, the teacher said quietly. And Nate's a wonderful father. It's nice to see him with someone who cares about both of them. In the car, Cooper fell asleep almost immediately, his small body radiating heat. Claire drove carefully, constantly checking the rearview mirror to make sure he was still breathing. When they reached the house, she found the key under the turtle planter exactly where Nate said it would be. Getting a sleeping, feverish 7-year-old into the house was harder than Claire expected. Cooper woke up halfway and helped walk, leaning heavily against her. She got him settled on the couch with a blanket and then stood in Nate's kitchen, suddenly unsure of what to do next. She found children's medicine in the cabinet, gave Cooper the correct dose, and started looking for something he might be able to eat. Soup seemed safe. She found cans of chicken noodle in the pantry and started heating it on the stove. Cooper watched her from the couch with glazed eyes. You didn't have to come get me. Dad could have gotten me. I wanted to come. You're important to me, Cooper. Even though I'm sick and gross? Even though you're sick. You're not gross. You're just not feeling well. There's a difference. Nate arrived 20 minutes later, bursting through the door with panic written all over his face. Cooper, buddy, how are you? He stopped, taking in the scene. Claire at the stove stirring soup, Cooper on the couch with medicine and water, everything under control. Claire, he breathed. He's okay. Temperature is 101. I gave him medicine 15 minutes ago. Soup should be ready in a few minutes. She set down the spoon. He's been asking for you. Nate went straight to Cooper, checking his forehead and asking soft questions. Claire stayed in the kitchen, giving them space. When Nate finally stood up, he looked at Claire with something raw and vulnerable in his eyes. You left work, he said, in the middle of the day. For him. Of course I did. Claire, that's... He stopped, seeming to struggle with words. That means everything to me. You know that, right? I know. He crossed the kitchen and pulled her into a hug, his face buried in her hair. Thank you. For being here. For taking care of him when I couldn't. You were on your way. I was just closer. She pulled back to look at him. Besides, this is what people do when they care about each other. They show up. I'm not used to anyone showing up. Get used to it. Claire ended up staying through dinner, feeding Cooper soup, watching children's movies, helping with a lukewarm bath to bring down his fever. Nate tried to send her home multiple times, insisting she'd done enough, but Claire refused. She'd cleared her calendar. She wasn't leaving. By 8 o'clock, Cooper was sleeping soundly in his bed, his fever down to 99. Nate and Claire sat on the couch, both exhausted. I'm sorry your Friday ended up like this, Nate said. I know you had work. I don't care about work. I care about you and Cooper needed help today. You were amazing with him, natural, like you've been doing this your whole life. Claire laughed. I was completely winging it. I've never taken care of a sick kid before. I kept Googling things on my phone when you weren't looking. You Googled taking care of a sick kid? I Googled everything. What temperature is too high? How often to give medicine? Whether chicken noodle soup is actually helpful or just traditional. I was terrified I was doing it wrong. Nate pulled her against his side. You did it perfect. Better than perfect. You were exactly what he needed. What I needed. They sat in comfortable silence, the house quiet around them. Claire realized she was still wearing her work clothes, an expensive blouse and slacks that now had soup stains and wrinkles. She looked nothing like the polished CEO who'd walked into a conference room that morning. She looked like someone who'd spent the day taking care of a sick child. She looked happy. Nate, she said quietly, I think I'm falling in love with your life. My life. This, the mess and the realness and the way Cooper trusts me even though he barely knows me. The way you called me when you needed help instead of handling everything alone. The way we're sitting here completely exhausted on a Friday night, and it feels more satisfying than any business dinner I've ever attended. She turned to look at him. I think I'm falling in love with what you've built here, with the idea that life can be about more than achievement. Claire, let me finish, please. She took a breath. I've spent 15 years building a company, and I'm proud of that work. But today, driving to pick up your son because you needed me, that felt more important than anything I've accomplished professionally. And that terrifies me because it means everything I thought mattered might not matter as much as I believed. Nate cupped her face in his hands. Your work does matter. Your company matters. You don't have to choose between having a career and having a life. You just have to find balance. I don't know how to balance. I only know how to work. Then we'll figure it out together, one sick day at a time. He kissed her softly. Stay tonight. In my room this time. No guest room. Just be with me. Claire knew what he was asking, not for sex necessarily, but for intimacy, for the vulnerability of sharing a bed, of trusting someone with the unguarded moments of sleep. It was more intimate than physical contact, more revealing than any conversation. Okay, she whispered. They checked on Cooper one more time, still sleeping peacefully, and then Nate led Claire to his bedroom. It was simple and comfortable, with furniture that was practical rather than stylish. A photo of Sarah sat on the dresser, smiling at the camera with love in her eyes. Claire paused, looking at it. Is this weird? She asked. Her photo being here? Do you want me to move it? No, she was part of your life, part of who you are, part of what made Cooper. I don't want you to hide that. Nate's expression softened. You're something else, Claire Hart. He lent her another shirt to sleep in. They brushed their teeth side by side at the bathroom sink like an old married couple. And then they climbed into bed together, and Nate pulled Claire against his chest, and she felt herself relax in a way she never had with another person. Tell me something true, Nate murmured into her hair. Like what? Like something you've never told anyone, something that scares you to say out loud. Claire was quiet for a long moment, feeling his heartbeat steady beneath her cheek. I'm afraid I waited too long to want this, to want a life beyond work. I'm afraid I'll mess this up because I don't know how to be a partner or a parental figure or anything except successful. You won't mess it up. You don't know that. I know you spent your Friday afternoon picking up my sick kid and Googling how to take care of him because you cared enough to do it right. I know you're lying here in my bed admitting you're scared instead of pretending to be perfect. That's not someone who's going to mess this up. That's someone who's trying. What if trying isn't enough? Then we'll try harder, together. He kissed the top of her head. Your turn. Ask me something true. Are you ready for this? For us? Or are you still holding part of yourself back because you're afraid? She felt him tense slightly. Both. I'm ready, and I'm terrified. I haven't loved anyone besides Cooper and Sarah in 7 years. Haven't wanted to. The thought of opening my heart again and risking that kind of loss. He stopped. But then I think about not having you in my life, and that scares me more than the risk of losing you. So what do? We keep showing up, we keep being honest, we keep taking it one day at a time until one day becomes a lifetime. Claire closed her eyes, feeling tears slip down her cheeks. I want that. A lifetime of this. Then let's build it, together. They fell asleep wrapped around each other, two people who'd spent years protecting themselves finally deciding to be brave. In the morning, Cooper woke up feeling better and found them in the kitchen making breakfast together, moving around each other with the easy familiarity of people who fit. Are you guys dating now? Cooper asked, watching them with serious eyes over his orange juice. Like official dating? Nate looked at Claire. Claire looked at Nate. They'd been dancing around the definition, avoiding labels, keeping things fluid because labels made it real, and real meant it could hurt. Yes, Claire said firmly. We're official dating, if that's okay with you. Cooper grinned. That's very okay with me. Does this mean you'll come to my science fair next month? I'm doing my project on Parasaurolophus vocalizations. I wouldn't miss it for anything. After breakfast, Claire finally drove back to her penthouse. Alone in her car, she called Marcy. How's the family emergency? Her assistant asked. It was Nate's son. He had a fever. I picked him up from school and stayed with him until he felt better. Silence. Then, Claire, you picked up someone's child from school on a Friday afternoon. I did. During work hours. I did. And you stayed with him instead of coming back to the office. I did. Who are you and what have you done with my boss? Claire laughed. I think I'm becoming someone who has priorities besides work. Is that okay? It's more than okay. It's amazing. Marcy's voice softened. So it's serious with this guy? It's serious. Really serious. Meeting his kid and sleeping at his house serious. Good. You deserve serious. You deserve someone who makes you leave work for once in your life. When Claire got home, her penthouse felt even emptier than before. She stood at her windows looking at the city and realized something fundamental had shifted. This place, with its perfect view and expensive furniture, wasn't home anymore. It was just where she kept her things. Home was a blue house in Riverside with dinosaur drawings on the refrigerator and a 7-year-old who trusted her to show up when it mattered. Home was wherever Nate and Cooper were. Her phone buzzed with a text from Nate. Nate, coffee shop. Cooper wants to know if you can come for Sunday dinner tomorrow. I want to know if you're free for the rest of your life. Claire smiled at her phone in her empty penthouse. Claire, tell Cooper yes to Sunday dinner. Tell yourself maybe to the rest of my life. But it's a very strong maybe. Nate, coffee shop. I'll take a strong maybe. That's the most commitment you've given anything besides work in 15 years. Claire, I'm learning to commit to what matters. You matter, Nate, you and Cooper, more than I knew people could matter. She stood at her windows and thought about balance and bravery and the strange courage it took to let yourself want something beyond achievement. She thought about the life she'd built with such careful precision and the life waiting for her in Riverside, messy and complicated and absolutely terrifying. And for the first time in 15 years, Claire Hart chose terrifying over safe. She chose love over control. She chose a future she couldn't plan or predict or manage into perfection. She chose Nate and Cooper and Sunday dinners and sick days and science fairs and every beautiful, ordinary moment that made life worth living. And she couldn't wait to see what came next. Sunday dinner became Monday breakfast, became Tuesday phone calls that stretched until midnight. Within 3 weeks, Claire had a toothbrush at Nate's house, and he had a drawer in her penthouse that sat mostly empty because he preferred his small blue house in Riverside. They were building something real in the spaces between their different lives. And for the first time, Claire wasn't trying to control the shape of it, but real meant complications. The first real fight happened on a Wednesday evening in late November. Claire was supposed to meet Nate and Cooper for dinner at 6, but got stuck in a meeting that ran long, then longer. By the time she checked her phone at 7:30, she had 6 missed calls and a text that made her stomach drop. Nate, coffee shop. Cooper's been watching the door for an hour. I told him you probably got held up at work, but he's not understanding why you'd choose work over us. I'm trying to explain, but honestly, I'm not sure I understand either. Claire left the meeting immediately, not even bothering to grab her coat. She drove to Riverside with her heart pounding and her hands shaking on the wheel, rehearsing apologies that all sounded inadequate. When she knocked on Nate's door at 8:15, he opened it with an expression she'd never seen before. Not angry exactly. Disappointed, which was somehow worse. Cooper's in bed, he said quietly. He cried himself to sleep. The words hit like a physical blow. Nate, I'm so sorry. The meeting ran over and I couldn't get away and you could have texted, you could have called, you could have done something besides leave us sitting there wondering if you were coming at all. You're right. I should have. I just... Claire stopped, the excuse dying in her throat. I got caught up in work and forgot everything else. Like I always do. That's what scares me. Nate leaned against the doorframe, looking exhausted. I believe you want to change, Claire. I believe you when you say we matter to you. But wanting to change and actually changing are different things. And I can't let Cooper get hurt because you can't figure out how to put your phone down during a meeting. That's not fair. Isn't it? You've been doing this for 15 years. Work always comes first. And I knew that going in, but I thought... He stopped, running a hand through his hair. I thought love would be enough. That wanting us would make the rest easier. It's not that simple. I know it's not. But Claire, we need to matter enough for you to set a boundary. To say, I have to leave now, even when the meeting isn't finished. Because if you can't do that, then this won't work. I won't watch my son learn that the people who claim to love him will always choose something else. Claire felt tears burning her eyes. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to be the person who leaves meetings, who puts personal life before professional obligations. That's not who I am. Then maybe you need to figure out who you want to be. Because the person you are now, she's lonely and overworked and eating dinner in her office at midnight. Is that really who you want to be forever? No? The word came out broken. No, I don't want that. But I don't know how to be anything else. Nate's expression softened slightly. I'm not asking you to stop working or give up your company. I'm asking you to set boundaries. To say, I have plans tonight, and mean it. To choose us sometimes, even when work is demanding something different. What if I can't? What if I try and fail? Then we'll deal with it, together. But Claire, you have to actually try. Not just say you'll try, actually do it. Because Cooper is 7 years old and he's already learning what broken promises feel like. I won't let him learn that from you. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with truth and ultimatum. Claire stood on Nate's porch in her expensive work clothes, looking at this man who'd somehow become the most important thing in her life, and realized she was standing at a crossroads. She could go back to her penthouse and her spreadsheets and her carefully controlled solitude. Or she could fight for this, really fight, not just talk about fighting. Let me see him, she said quietly. Please, let me apologize to Cooper. He's asleep. Then I'll wait. I'll sit in his room until he wakes up, and I'll tell him I'm sorry, and I'll mean it. And tomorrow I'm going to do something I've never done before. What's that? I'm going to set a boundary with my team. I'm going to tell them that I have commitments outside of work that matter, and when I say I need to leave, I'm leaving. No exceptions. Nate searched her face. And if they push back? Then they push back. But I'm done letting work control every aspect of my life. I'm done choosing meetings over the people I love. She took a breath. Because I do love you, Nate. And I love Cooper. And I'm tired of being too scared to say it out loud. Something shifted in Nate's expression. You love us. I love you. Both of you. Completely and terrifyingly, and I know I'm bad at showing it. I know I mess up and prioritize the wrong things. But I want to learn. I want to be better. For you and for Cooper and for myself. Nate pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. I love you too. That's why this scares me so much. Because I've already lost one person I loved, and I can't lose another. Especially not to something as stupid as work meetings. They stood on the porch holding each other while the November wind picked up around them. Eventually, Nate led her inside and up to Cooper's room. The boy was sleeping restlessly, his face still tear-stained. Claire sat carefully on the edge of his bed and smoothed his hair back. I'm sorry, she whispered, even though he couldn't hear her. I'm sorry I let you down. It won't happen again, I promise. She stayed there for an hour, just watching him sleep, until Nate finally convinced her to come to bed. They lay awake in the dark, not talking, just being present with each other and the weight of everything they'd said. Are we okay? Claire asked quietly. We're going to be. But Claire, you have to follow through. You have to actually change, not just talk about changing. I will, I promise. Thursday morning, Claire walked into her office at 8 a.m. and called an emergency meeting with her executive team. 8 people gathered in the conference room, looking curious and slightly concerned about what their CEO needed to discuss so urgently. Claire stood at the head of the table and said the words she'd been rehearsing all morning. I need to make some changes to how I work. Effective immediately, I will not be available after 6 p.m. on weekdays or at all on weekends except in genuine emergencies. I will not be attending meetings that run past 6 unless they're scheduled in advance and absolutely necessary. And when I say I need to leave, I'm leaving, no exceptions. Silence. Her COO looked shocked. Her legal counsel looked confused. Marcy, sitting in the corner taking notes, looked proud. I know this is different from how I've operated for the last 15 years, Claire continued, but I've realized that being available 24/7 isn't sustainable. It's not healthy for me, and it's not necessary for the company. I hired all of you because you're excellent at your jobs. It's time I trusted you to do them without my constant oversight. Claire, her COO said carefully, Are you okay? Is something wrong? Nothing's wrong. Something's actually right for the first time in a long time. I'm dating someone seriously. He has a 7-year-old son. And last night I missed dinner with them because I couldn't leave a meeting. And I watched that little boy learn that adults who claim to care about him will choose work over him every single time. Her voice cracked slightly. I won't do that again. Work is important, but it's not more important than the people I love. The room was silent. Then Marcy started clapping. Slowly at first, then enthusiastically, until the rest of the team joined in. It's about damn time, Marcy said. We've been waiting for you to figure out you're human for years. Claire laughed despite the tears in her eyes. So you're all okay with this? With me being less available? We're more than okay with it, her COO said. Claire, you're brilliant and driven, and we all respect you immensely, but you're also completely burned out and have been for at least 3 years. If setting boundaries means we get a CEO who's actually present instead of just physically here, then that's better for everyone. The relief that flooded through Claire was almost overwhelming. She'd been so afraid that setting boundaries would mean losing respect or control or effectiveness. Instead, her team was supporting her, celebrating her choice to be human. That evening, Claire left work at 5:45. She turned off her work phone and drove to Riverside with a bag of groceries and a determination to prove she could follow through. When she knocked on Nate's door at 6:15, Cooper answered. He looked at her with uncertain eyes. You came. I came. And I'm sorry about yesterday. I made a mistake and I hurt you, and I'm going to do better. Dad says people mess up sometimes, but what matters is if they fix it. Your dad is very smart. Can I come in and help make dinner? I brought stuff for tacos. Cooper's face lit up. I love tacos. Dinner was chaotic and perfect. Cooper talked nonstop about his day at school while Claire chopped vegetables and Nate managed the meat. They worked together in the small kitchen like a team, moving around each other with growing familiarity. After dinner, they built a blanket fort in the living room and watched a documentary about dinosaurs that Cooper had requested from the library. When bedtime came, Cooper asked Claire to read to him again. This time, she didn't hesitate. She read 2 chapters about hadrosaur fossils, answered approximately 40 questions, and tucked him in with a kiss on the forehead that felt natural instead of awkward. Claire, Cooper said sleepily as she reached the door, I'm glad you came tonight and that you said sorry. That was brave. Thank you for giving me another chance. That's what families do, right? They give chances. Claire's throat tightened. Yeah, buddy, that's what families do. Downstairs, Nate pulled her into his arms. You came at 6:15. You actually did it. I told my team I'm setting boundaries. No more late meetings unless absolutely necessary. No more weekends in the office. I'm choosing us. And they were okay with it? They were more than okay with it. Apparently I've been burning out for years and everyone could see it except me. She looked up at him. I'm going to mess up again. I know I will, but I'm trying, Nate, really trying. That's all I'm asking. The weeks that followed established a new rhythm. Claire worked hard from 8 to 6, delegated more, and learned to trust her team with decisions she'd always made herself. She spent 3 nights a week at Nate's house and convinced him to spend 1 night a week at her penthouse with Cooper, slowly merging their separate lives into something shared. She attended Cooper's science fair and cheered louder than anyone when he won 3rd place for his Parasaurolophus project. She learned to make papier-mâché and grilled cheese and all the small skills that mattered in the day-to-day business of family life. It wasn't perfect. She still occasionally got caught up in work and lost track of time, but now she recognized it when it happened and apologized and did better the next day. And slowly, the balance she'd thought impossible started to feel natural. December brought Cooper's 8th birthday and a request that stopped Claire's heart. Can you help me plan my party? He asked one evening after dinner. Dad's good at the food part, but he's bad at decorations. Mom used to do decorations. It was the first time Cooper had mentioned his mother directly to Claire. She looked at Nate, who nodded encouragingly. I would love to help with decorations, Claire said carefully. What kind of party are you thinking? Dinosaurs, obviously, but like fancy dinosaurs with balloons and streamers and a cake that looks like a volcano. Fancy dinosaurs, I can work with that. Planning Cooper's party became Claire's favorite project of the year. She researched dinosaur decorations with the same intensity she usually reserved for business strategy. She ordered custom balloons and learned to make tissue paper pterodactyls. She found a baker who could create a volcano cake that actually smoked. and she involved Cooper in every decision, making sure he felt heard and valued. The night before the party, Claire and Nate stayed up late transforming his backyard into the Mesozoic era. They hung decorations and set up tables and argued about the proper placement of the inflatable T-Rex. At midnight, they stood back to survey their work. "It looks amazing," Nate said, pulling her close. "You're amazing." "I just followed Cooper's vision." "No, you made his vision better than he imagined it could be. That's a gift, Claire. Making people's dreams bigger than they thought possible." The party was loud and chaotic and absolutely perfect. 15, 7, and 8-year-olds ran around the backyard playing dinosaur games and eating cake, and having the kind of pure, uncomplicated joy that reminded Claire why any of this mattered. Cooper spent the entire party beaming, occasionally running over to hug either Nate or Claire with volcanic enthusiasm. As the sun set and parents came to collect their exhausted children, Cooper pulled Claire aside. "This was the best birthday ever," he said seriously. "Thank you for making it special." "You're welcome, sweetie. I'm glad you had fun." "Claire, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Are you going to marry my dad?" Claire's heart stopped. She looked around for Nate, who was busy helping another parent find their child's shoes, completely unaware of the conversation happening 15 feet away. "Cooper, that's a really big question." "I know, but I need to know because if you're going to be part of our family for real, I need to know if I should start thinking of you like—" He stopped, struggling with words that were too big for an 8-year-old. "Like a mom. Not instead of my real mom, but like another mom. Is that okay to want?" Claire knelt down so she was eye level with him, tears already streaming down her face. "It's completely okay to want that, and I want that too, so much. But that's something your dad and I need to talk about first, okay? Before we make any big decisions." "But you love him, right? And you love me?" "I love you both more than anything." "Then it'll probably work out." Cooper hugged her fiercely. "I'm glad you're here, Claire." After all the guests left and Cooper was in bed, exhausted and happy, Claire and Nate cleaned up the backyard together. She waited until they were sitting on the back porch, surrounded by deflating dinosaurs, before telling him about Cooper's question. Nate was quiet for a long moment. "He asked if you were going to marry me." "He did." "What did you say?" "That I love you both, and that we needed to talk about it first." Claire turned to look at him. "So I guess we should talk about it." "We've been together for less than 3 months." "I know." "That's insane. People don't get married after 3 months." "I know that too. But I want to." Nate took her hand. "I want to marry you, Claire. I want to wake up next to you every morning and build a life with you and watch you be the mother Cooper's already decided you are. And I know it's too soon and too fast and completely insane, but I've wasted 7 years being careful and safe. I don't want to waste any more time." Claire felt her heart expanding, filling up with something too big to name. "I want that too, but I need to know, are you sure? Really sure? Because I'm going to mess up. I'm going to work too late sometimes and forget things and be terrible at all the things that come naturally to you. Are you sure you want to marry someone who's still learning how to be human?" "I'm sure. Because you're not learning how to be human. You're learning how to let people see the human you've always been. And that's the woman I love. The one who researches dinosaurs at midnight and leaves work early to pick up a sick kid and cries during children's birthday parties because she's finally letting herself feel everything she's been holding back for 15 years. "When?" Claire asked. "When would we do this?" "Whenever you want. Tomorrow. Next year. I don't care about the timeline. I just care about the commitment." Claire thought about her life 3 months ago, empty and controlled and completely hollow. She thought about the restaurant where she'd sat alone under a fake name, trying to prove she didn't need anyone. She thought about the moment she'd looked across at Nate and recognized another person who was hiding in plain sight. "Spring," she said. "Let's do it in the spring. Small ceremony, just the people who matter most. I want to marry you in your backyard under the oak tree where you told me you wanted to build me a treehouse." Nate pulled her into his arms. "Spring it is. You, me, Cooper, and the people we love. Nothing fancy. Just real." They sat on the porch until the stars came out, planning a future that 3 months ago had seemed impossible. They talked about where they'd live, deciding to sell Claire's penthouse and buy a bigger house in Riverside with room for everyone. They talked about how Claire would balance work with family, about the boundaries she'd need to maintain and the support Nate would provide. They talked about Cooper and schools and how they'd blend their different lives into something shared. At midnight, Nate pulled something from his pocket. A simple ring, silver with a small diamond that caught the porch light. "I bought this 2 weeks ago," he admitted. "I've been carrying it around, waiting for the right moment. But I think Cooper decided the right moment is now." "You bought an engagement ring after 6 weeks of dating?" "I bought an engagement ring after 6 weeks of knowing I'd found the person I want to spend the rest of my life with. There's a difference." He slid off the porch swing and knelt on the wooden boards. "Claire Hart, will you marry me? Will you build a life with me and Cooper? Will you let us love you the way you deserve to be loved?" Claire looked at this man kneeling on his back porch, surrounded by deflating dinosaurs and birthday party debris, offering her everything she'd spent 15 years convincing herself she didn't want. "Yes," she said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, I'll marry you. Yes to all of it." The ring slid onto her finger perfectly. Nate stood and kissed her under the stars. And somewhere inside the house, Claire heard Cooper's bedroom door open. "Did you ask her?" Cooper's voice came from the back door, excited and sleepy. "I thought you were asleep," Nate said. "How could I sleep? This is the most important thing ever." Cooper ran onto the porch. "Did you say yes, Claire?" "I said yes." Cooper launched himself at both of them, wrapping his arms around their legs. "We're going to be a real family now, all of us together." They stood there in the December cold, Nate and Claire and Cooper, tangled together on a back porch, and Claire felt something settle in her chest. Something that felt like peace, like home, like everything she'd been searching for without knowing what she was searching for. The next morning, Cooper insisted on calling his grandmother to share the news. Then he made Claire promise they could get a dog after the wedding because families should have dogs. Then he drew another picture. This one of the three of them under the oak tree with a house in the background and a dog that was mostly enthusiasm and very little accuracy. Claire called Marcy next, who screamed so loud that Nate heard it from across the room. "You're getting married? After 3 months? Claire, this is the most romantic and impulsive thing you've ever done." "I know, it's completely insane. It's completely perfect. When's the wedding?" "Spring, small ceremony. You're invited, obviously." "I'm not invited. I'm demanded. I've waited 8 years for you to find happiness. I'm not missing this." Over the next few months, Claire learned what it meant to plan a life instead of just a wedding. She sold her penthouse and moved into a house in Riverside 3 blocks from Nate's current place, big enough for all of them with room to grow. She reduced her hours at work to 45 per week, training her executive team to handle more responsibility. She learned to coach Cooper's soccer team despite knowing nothing about soccer. She joined Nate on job sites sometimes, watching him build beautiful things with his hands, while she learned to appreciate work that was tangible instead of abstract. And slowly, the life she'd built with such careful precision transformed into something messier and more beautiful. Something real. The wedding happened on a Saturday in April, under the oak tree in their new backyard. 25 people came. Claire's executive team, Nate's closest friends, Cooper's grandparents, and a handful of other people who'd mattered along the way. Cooper served as best man, taking his job incredibly seriously. Marcy cried through the entire ceremony. Claire wore a simple dress and no shoes because the grass was soft and warm. Nate wore a suit he'd bought new instead of borrowed. They exchanged vows they'd written themselves, promising to be brave and honest and present, promising to choose each other even when work or fear or old habits tried to pull them apart. When the officiant said, "You may kiss," Cooper cheered louder than anyone. At the reception, a casual barbecue in the backyard, Claire found herself standing by the newly finished treehouse, watching Nate show a group of kids how the pulley system worked. Marcy appeared beside her with 2 glasses of wine. "You did it," Marcy said. You actually changed your entire life." "I did." "Are you happy?" Claire looked at Nate laughing with the kids, at Cooper racing around with his new friends, at the house that was full of noise and life and mess, at the ring on her finger and the future stretching out ahead of them. "I'm happy," she said, and realized it was the truest thing she'd ever said. I'm actually completely, terrifyingly happy. Good. You deserve it. That night, after all the guests left and Cooper was asleep, Claire and Nate lay in bed in their new house. Through the window, they could see the oak tree and the treehouse lit by solar lights Nate had installed. No regrets? Nate asked softly. Not a single one. You? Only that I didn't meet you sooner. We met exactly when we were supposed to, when we were both ready to stop hiding. I love you, Claire Wilder. The name still felt new, Claire Wilder instead of Claire Hart. But it felt right, like she'd finally figured out who she was supposed to be all along. I love you too, both of you, my whole family. They fell asleep holding hands, two people who'd met by accident and chosen each other on purpose. Two people who'd learned that sometimes the wrong night leads you exactly where you need to be. That sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit you're lonely and let someone love you anyway. That sometimes when you stop trying to control everything, life gives you something better than anything you could have planned. 3 months later, they adopted a dog. Cooper named him Larry, after his favorite Parasaurolophus. The dog was chaos and shedding and absolutely perfect. 6 months after that, Claire launched a new initiative at her company focused on work-life balance and parental leave. She gave a speech about the importance of boundaries and presence, about how success meant nothing if you lost yourself achieving it. The speech went viral. Other CEOs reached out asking for advice. Claire started consulting on company culture, helping other executives learn what she'd learned, that being human wasn't weakness, it was strength. A year after the wedding, Cooper asked if they could have a baby brother or sister. Claire and Nate looked at each other and laughed because they'd been talking about the same thing for months, trying to find the right time to bring it up. We can try, Claire said carefully, but it might not happen, and that would be okay too, because we're already a complete family. I know, Cooper said wisely, but complete families can get bigger. That's what Dad says. 2 years after that, Claire gave birth to a daughter they named Sarah Hope. Sarah for Nate's first wife. Hope for the thing that had brought them all together. Cooper was an enthusiastic big brother, teaching his baby sister about dinosaurs before she could even hold up her own head. And through it all, Claire continued working. But she worked differently now, with boundaries and balance, and the knowledge that her worth wasn't measured in hours you're logged or deals closed. She measured it in Cooper's soccer games and family dinners, and the way Nate still looked at her like she was the best thing that ever happened to him. She measured it in Saturday morning pancakes and bedtime stories, and the slow, beautiful accumulation of ordinary moments that added up to an extraordinary life. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Nate took Claire back to the coffee shop where they'd first talked. It was still shabby and wonderful, with the same wobbling tables and terrible pastries. Do you remember what you said that first night? Nate asked, holding her hand across their old table. I said a lot of things that first night. You said you were terrified of needing someone, that independence was safer than connection. I remember. Do you still feel that way? Claire thought about their life. The noise and mess and absolute chaos of living with a husband and 2 kids and a dog named Larry, about how her penthouse had been quiet and perfect and completely empty, about how this life was loud and imperfect and absolutely full. No, she said, I'm not terrified anymore. I'm grateful. For you, for Cooper, for Sarah, for all of it. For the night I showed up to a restaurant under a fake name and met someone who saw through all my walls. I'm grateful too, for the woman who was brave enough to have terrible coffee with a stranger, who chose to try even when trying was terrifying. They left the coffee shop hand in hand and drove home to Riverside, to the house full of noise and life, to the kids who needed homework help and dinner, to the dog who needed walking, to the beautiful, messy, perfect life they'd built together. That night, after the kids were asleep, Claire stood in their backyard looking up at the treehouse. Nate came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. Remember when I said I wanted to build you a treehouse? He asked. A place where you could remember you're more than your work? I remember. Did it work? Claire leaned back against him, feeling his heartbeat steady against her spine. She thought about the woman she'd been 5 years ago, lonely and overworked and convinced she didn't need anyone. She thought about how far she'd come, how much she'd changed, how brave she'd had to be to let herself be loved. "It worked," she said softly. "You built me something beautiful, and then you taught me how to live in it." They stood there in the spring evening, holding each other under the stars. Two people who'd found their way home through coffee shops and terrible pastries, and the courage to stop hiding. Two people who'd learned that the best things in life were the ones you couldn't plan or control or manage into perfection. Two people who'd discovered that sometimes, when you're brave enough to want something real, the universe gives you everything you didn't know you needed. And that was worth more than any empire Claire had ever built.